workplaces are changing with rapid advances in technology. Automation, digitization, and AI are transforming almost every industry, changing existing job roles and the skills required for those jobs. Are you ready for the shift and the pace of change? Beyond simply adapting, how will you thrive in this emerging world? Hello, I'm Aloni Bhatt, and welcome to Economic Times Thought Leadership Series, The Future of Jobs, which looks at the trends within industries, especially tech trends, that will shape enterprise and skills of the future. We have top industry experts who are at the front line of change, attempting to answer questions and ponder upon nuances that many of us are grappling with. How will pandemic-linked disruptions in tech interact with economic uncertainty? How will it drive innovation and investments? Will it make tech more inclusive so that new jobs create a more equitable future? From AI to crypto, what happens when tech converges? How will it calibrate skilling and learning for the future? There are deeper insights in our report, authored by the stellar editorial team at ET Prime. The report, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Jobs Galaxy, is free to download on the Future of Jobs website. Do check it out. On this journey, we'd like to thank our partners, starting with our co-presenting partner, ThinkExam, skilling partner, NIIT, talent partner, CoinDCX, and B-School partner, ICFAI Business School.
Folks, thank you for inviting me to speak on the future of jobs. I do know that everybody is discussing about the future, especially when we are in the era of the digital revolution. 20 years ago, the internet came into being, and in the COVID times, we've seen an enormous number of people go onto the web to connect with each other, and industry and business is spending large amounts of money on digitization, automation, and reaching out to consumers through the digital world. In the digital world, people will interact with each other synchronously, asynchronously. They will get all the goods and services delivered by them electronically with physical delivery. They will do business on the internet. They will get their education on the internet digitally. They will get their health services. Of course, you have to visit hospital if you fall really sick and get all those tubes into your body. And they'll also get entertainment, banking, and everything else. And there's a disruption that's happening after maybe 250 years. The large, big disruption that happened was the Industrial Revolution and the coming of the age of machines, which created the world we live in right now, which is changing very fast. In that world, the Industrial Revolution created the global supply chain of goods and services. Now, the global supply chain is also changing. What we're seeing is the emergence of a digital platform where consumers will interact. Out of 7.8 billion people on the planet, 5.5 billion people have a mobile connection, 5 billion people are on the internet, and this is creating change. Almost everybody who is a decent consumer is on the internet or will be on the internet in the next 2 years. And in that scenario, how will life change for us? How will industry change for us? And finally, how will jobs change for us? Let me explain what could be happening by 2030. Of course, 2030 is 8 years away, is as far as you can think. We don't know who is going to be there to talk to you and explain to you what actually happened in 2030. Hopefully, somebody will record this and play it and see whether it's true or not. And if you're able to get 45-50% of what we discussed today come true, that will be a fantastic achievement. We are living now in the digital world, and the digital world is leading to the metaverse. Metaverse is a world where we move from reality to virtual reality simultaneously. That means we are going to create a virtual reality or simulation of cities, of towns, of businesses, of avatars and everything else. And we will live in the real world, and we'll move between the two in the blink of an eyelid. And for most people who work in the metaverse or live in the metaverse, it means that it will be almost seamless. So you will not know whether you are living in the physical world or the metaverse. And that implies digitization, use of artificial intelligence, use of machine learning, use of robotics, use of humanoids, and use of such technologies to a very great degree. So when that happens, the way of doing business, the way of doing things will change dramatically. And the global supply chain will move to the back end from being a very determinant force, which is helping competition win in the current era. The next will be in very many areas of our interaction, there'll be change. By 2030, 60% of vehicles on the road will be electric vehicles. The ICE engine market is what, $2 trillion with 90 million four-wheelers being sold. And out of which maybe by 2030, 60% could be new vehicles being sold that year. Of course, the ICE engine is not going to disappear because there's a huge stock of ICE engines. But when you are in a very different world, you will have autonomous vehicles coming. Then will you own a vehicle? Will you own a car? There'll be vehicles available to you on an app. You get into the vehicle and you can travel to wherever. It will drop you off without a driver and you don't have to own it. In the United States, 10% of real estate is taken up for parking. Accidents will be limited because they're autonomous, they'll use radar, they'll drive safely. Insurance will come down. Fuel and gas and fuel usage will come down. There'll be possibly green power being used to a great degree. So you'll have homes with solar panels on the roof, which will be stored in a battery made of fuel cells or hydrogen or whatever it is. And that will be used to charge your car or anything else that you may need. So you could be off the grid. And if electric vehicles come, the number of total vehicles on the road could come down because research proves the vehicles are used only 10% of the time, and most of the time they're spent in parking. I'm sure you know about that. So people may not own it. The industry may shrink, and there could be a lot of vehicles which can live on for 500,000, 1 million kilometers, because right now you have to replace IC engines of more than 200 or 250,000 kilometers. The entire industry will get disrupted. The healthcare industry will get disrupted because we're coming to the era of genomics. People will live longer. Less babies will be born. The population will age. And I'm told by 2100, the world population, which is supposed to go from 7.8 billion to 11 billion, will be limited to 9 to 9.5 billion. Already you're seeing large parts of the world have fertility level below replacement. Lesser babies are being born, including India. India's fertility is 2.0. The south of India's fertility is 1.7. Replacement for India is still 2.3. So we could have an aging population and people living longer. And for them, there'll be digital medicine based on genomics. That means your DNA will be taken and medicine will be re-engineered to meet your DNA. I'm told that 30% of all medicine is not fit for people because there are mutations in the body and they cannot use that particular medicine. So we'll have this. There'll be stem cell research to grow body organs. There'll be rejuvenation programs to grow everything. So when you grow to 70, 80, your body organs may be regenerated because they're going to pump you full of stem cells. And so many things else. You could have chips in your mind. So the world of medicine is going to change. Banking is going to change because, with those apps and newer banks coming, you're going to operate through apps and banks will become utilities. Every time you want money, you'll be set up for auction and banks will bid for your business. Your savings may be dispersed among various ETFs or products like that. And you could have bitcoins or electronic coins or whatever. So it's going to be a very exciting time and it's going to be much more complex. There'll be greater velocity in the use of money, and banking will also fundamentally change because there's a very big industry. And then the travel industry will change in a very dramatic manner. And travel will change primarily because there'll be simulation. You don't have to travel to meet people for business. You don't have to travel to go see various places. You can see it on the web. Maybe you travel, but you'll travel in autonomous cars. You'll stay in places which are not run by people. You'll have robots serving you in hotels and restaurants. And then if you look at other industries like possibly commodities or the metal industry, we are seeing innovation where the molecular structure of metals is being deconstructed and decomposed so that new materials and new ways of doing stuff may come into being. It may mean that we're using less of aluminum, less of iron, less of everything else, and we'll have alternate materials will be as strong. So the weight of a car may actually come down because it may not use the kind of aluminum that is using today, and the weight of a train may come down, and the usage of metal may also come down, and that is a very big industry by itself. We could have intersolar travel like Musk is trying to do. So you could go to Mars, you could go to the moon, and you could go somewhere else. We could have planes flying at Mach 2 or Mach 3, 2 or 3 times the speed of sound. So you could go things faster. And we could come into the sharing economy where people will not own assets, but will share the asset and use the asset. And all the assets will be in the balance sheet of big insurance companies, which could own them and give it out to you for rental, so that you can change your house, you can change your residence and everything else. But all the various industries that you have today, which are very large industries, for example, the oil and gas industry is a $5 trillion industry. That may shrink for a period of time. Income in the Middle East may come down. Then the auto industry is a $2 trillion industry. The banking industry could be a $10 trillion industry. And the food industry could be a $20-30 trillion industry. So all this kind of various industries could actually shrink, could actually go somewhere else. But then how do you pay for all that? What are the jobs that are going to come? Well, my view is 60% of our activity will be automated. It may not happen in India because it will take more time. We're a large population. We're developing. We still need to build houses, roads, bridges. We still need to do many things. But in developed countries like the United States and other areas, which are rich and old with a lot of money, automation has come already very fast. In the last 15 years, maybe 15-16 million middle-class jobs have disappeared in the US. So, jobs are going to be a constraint. That means the rich middle-class jobs, which are rule-based, can be done by machines, will be done by software, will be done by AI. Machines will be trained to do that. In the manufacturing space, robotics will come into being. So much of the jobs that we have will disappear. So in my view, there'll be three kinds of jobs. The first kind of job will be the unique creative jobs, which is difficult to automate, though it may happen. For example, musicians, dancers, writers, singers, etc. Creators of graphic design, comics, and filmmakers, and all that. Because it's not worth automating all that because it's very creative. Even though people are trying to use robotics and a robo and AI to write novels and all that, it may not be very exciting. It may take too much of time, but it could also happen. Those kind of jobs will be more and will proliferate, but the payment that you get may be less. Maybe there'll be a lot more comics, a lot more entertainment for you. And that job will be a limited number of jobs. The second kind of jobs will be jobs in high tech. And high tech means people who write algorithm, people who write software, people who are able to write mathematical formula, people who use it to, you are in genomics, people who are in deep healthcare, people who are expert doctors, etc. Because these are all specialists that will happen. And the third largest number of jobs will be jobs for people who take care of other people. Geriatrics is going to be a big area. Jobs for nurses to take care of older people who will use technology, but not everybody can use technology. Service sector jobs like entertainment, like restaurants and hotels where people may still go. And those kind of jobs where, will be a plenty. And those jobs are not going to pay very well. So definitely, you have to choose between the three to see where you are going to be. And in the developed world, if jobs shrink, how will people live? Now, people are coming out with a very interesting strategy, and the strategy is very simple. What they want to do essentially is to make sure that every robo is taken as an employee and tax is charged on every robo. If a robo has an output of 20 lakhs, that will be taken as an income, and he has to pay tax like an ordinary individual like you and I do. And that tax can be allocated to somebody else. That means every adult could have a robo working somewhere, and the robo, whatever earning is there, possibly goes to you, and you pay the tax on that. You'll be linked to that. People are thinking of various ways to do that. Is it going to happen by 2030? I don't know. But people are definitely talking and thinking of taxing all this automation and robots so that if people can actually live. Now, for us to succeed in this new world, so you need to have a curious bent of mind. Curiosity is very important because curiosity leads to innovation. Curiosity leads to learning. Curiosity leads to knowledge accumulation. And if you have a curiosity and you read and you're able to imbibe, you're able to use technology, definitely you'll be able to do many, many jobs, and definitely there'll be scope for you. You may not have a full-time job, but you'll be part of the gig workforce who will work as a specialist or work for groups. There'll be loose groups working all over the place. Second is, you need to have a problem-solving attitude. Because today, if you're a problem solver, you can run a business or own a business. Because if you're a problem solver, you're always at the top of the food chain because you're solving problems. Next, if you have coding skills, you'll have a great chance of success because more and more work will be done by software. And at least for the next 10, 15 years, I don't think you'll have automated code writing. Even if it's automated code writing, it'll take many times to mature and to come up. A lot of code has to be written and rewritten. Part of it may be automated, but still human beings will be required. And since the income differentiation between the developed countries and countries like India is still very large and will remain large for the foreseeable future, there'll be great scope if you learn coding. So I would advise every young person to learn reading, writing, mathematics, and coding. So if you learn coding, you can be sure that you have a better chance of getting work. And that, I think, is very important. Next, you need good communication skills. If you have a good persona, good communication skills, that will allow you to compete against the self, because you have to express yourself, you have to convince yourself, your body language has to be positive. Lastly, you must build a network. We should all be part of networks, because the networks are going to be important. Networks connect with each other and give us opportunities. Networks tell us what is happening somewhere else. Networks allow us access to knowledge. Networks allow us access to economic opportunities. And all these qualities are required. And I think that is something that all of us have to imbibe, and especially young people who are coming to the workforce. So I want to end my keynote by just saying that 2030, the world will be very different from whatever we can see now. It will have more automation, more robotics, more artificial intelligence, and more digital. It will be in the interconnected world. The metaverse is going to be a reality. Virtual reality and reality are going to be merged. Many industries which are there today will be very changed, and they're already changing at the edge. If you look at each industry at the edge, there's change. On the base, change will come over a period of time. So all industries are going to change. Interaction with people is going to be very different. Society is going to age with lesser number of children being born, and people are going to live longer. New areas of medicine and healthcare will come into being in the top 25, 30%. If you do that, I'm sure we'll succeed. But in any case, life is going to be exciting and life is going to change. And I think, we'll wait and see what the change is. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and wish you all the best.
Hello and welcome to the ET Future of Jobs Summit. We have a very interesting conversation today, a very interesting panel and a very interesting topic for the panel. We are looking at the future of mobility, which is electric vehicle. The topic, as is written, is under the hood, the car, the machine, the EV. And to discuss this, we have a wonderful panel in front of us. We've got Puneet Goel, who is a co-founder at Blue Smart Electric Mobility. We've got Mahesh Babu, who is Chief Executive Officer at Switch Mobility. And we've got Sameer Jindal, who is EV Head and Director of Engineering at MG Motor India. Welcome, all of you. Just to give a context to this conversation, I think while there is a big shift happening on the roads, I think there is an equally big shift that is happening on the jobs front as well. It's a once in a century kind of a shift that's essentially happening, right? EVs have become something of a statement now. The shift is happening now. It's the transition time. How quickly do you think this shift will materialize from internal combustion engine vehicle to EVs? You could start, Mahesh.
Okay, thank you, Nimble. I think you gave a very interesting and important topic which needs to be debated a lot. First is the shift which is happening now is unprecedented in auto industry for a century. And like I used to say in many of the forums for the last 8 years, this is inevitable. And if somebody is still debating, will this shift happen? I think we are in the past. It's inevitable because of three important reasons: of energy security of the country like India, the emission problem we have in our cities, and the new age generation of people, young people available in the country, and urbanization, what's happening in the country. So these urbanization, pollution, and energy security will drive sustainable mobility. And sustainable mobility, today we have a solution of electric mobility. Some of my colleagues like Puneet will know I'm lucky to work on 8 years on this in the country. But I have worked for like 25 years plus in the auto industry. Let's look at how this transition happened. I myself is a hardcore emission combustion engineer from IC engine. That's how I started my career. Because from college, people used to aspire to be a combustion engineer, because at that time, it used to be the most fascinating subject for young engineers. I'm sitting now after, let's say, 25, 30 years, and then you will look at it. The most fascinating subject today is about battery, power electronics, and sustainable mobility. So the shift has happened, and it has happened naturally, and this has happened over a period of time. And while this transition has already started, I would say a decade or two before, there are a lot of efforts which have gone in this transition, and this has not come so easy. I remember when I moved in 2015, Puneet will remember when we did the first trial, nobody were believing it. We were actually running a car, India's first sedan, the Mahindra Electric Verito on Delhi. And we go by used case of one by one, and then we got convinced, and then before we went into the next step. Similarly, I was lucky to work on three-wheelers. I was now working on buses. So each used case have been understood, implemented, and India is a very unique country. You can't make anything without economic viability. You need to applicate with economic viability or aspirational things, which Samir will talk about, the cars. Either you have to make the vehicle aspirational or you have to make economically viable. So wherever commercial applications are there, we have to make it economically viable. Wherever there is personal mobility, we'll have to make it aspirational. So I think the auto industry, and particularly EV transition, have understood it. And now we are talking about at least 90+% CAGR up to 2030, looking at a $150 billion industry by 2030. While the adoption is about 1.3% today, we are talking about 30 to 70% in some segments by 2030. And this transition is already on a move. The question is whether you are going to be part of it or you are not going to be part of it. That's the only question I feel it. And it is going to change a lot of skill development at leadership level, at mid-level, and also at very entry level. We need to get prepared, and I'm sure all of us are going to get prepared to this transition.
Yeah, I think Mahesh ji has put a very valid point that this transition is going to happen. And how everybody is going to be in this fair is going to be a long-term thing which we have to see in India. But this is a slow curve, and this we all know that this will take a lot of maturation, and we'll have to go towards the dream of 2030 being 70%, let's say, in passenger two-wheelers or three-wheelers, and 50%, let's say, in buses, trucks, maybe, I don't know, but 30% maybe in cars. But as you heard Mahindra also saying, it can reach 50% by 2030. So it all depends on how things develop. And things develop is basically a lot of factors. And all major players in the auto industry worldwide is now focused and also put all their research money into developing a skateboard platform like GM is doing Ultium. Similarly, Volvo, now Ford, Lotus, and all, they have stopped research on IC engines and focusing on electric vehicles. So these all indicators are from global. Same way Mahindra, Tata, everybody in India, the indigenous companies also started doing extensive research and putting a lot of money into this area. So this is definitely going to develop it. Same way, like as for our parent company SAIC, which is the largest company in China, is putting a lot of money and maybe bringing up to 80 to 100 models in next 3 to 4 years, 5 years. Similarly, we will bring more models in India as SAIC will develop. But overall, the market, how it will develop, the question what you asked, Nirmal, it will be dependent on many other things. So first is like cost of EV. It has to come down. And as you know, 50% of it depends on the battery cost. So that battery cost has to come down, develop in next 4 to 5 years. We will have to localize, we will have to bring in more big battery players in India to provide a lower cost battery. Charging infrastructure is one of the biggest thing which government also need to focus, and oil companies are doing it, private companies are doing it. At MG Motor also, we are trying to put as many as chargers as possible. Recently, we announced around 1,000 chargers in the residential area. other than the DC chargers. This was AC chargers. DC chargers at all the MG service stations and all. And then government support and policies, definitely. As you know, I used to go to China like 5 years from now, earlier. And then that time also, the China government policies were very favorable for EV. And this has led to the development, what we see in China now. They are selling more than 2 lakh cars. So that has happened in not overnight. It has happened in the last 10 years and with government support and policies. So those things have to come in India. And along with government and our private industry, we can make this dream come true of our Prime Minister.
Right. Puneet, your perspective on.
I think, just like Mahesh said, I think the shift to EVs is absolutely imminent. Some people will understand it early, some people will take more time to understand, but I think the time has now come for all the automobile manufacturers, because Blue Smart is India's largest fully electric ride-hailing service, and we have a lot of cars of Mahindra, Tata Motors, and also MG. We firmly believe that with the rising fuel costs of CNG, petrol, and diesel, and India being a net importer of fuel, it doesn't make sense for you to drive your taxis or long-distance vehicles on CNG, petrol, and diesel. It doesn't make sense, absolutely. The cost of CNG has gone up by 2x since 2016-17 Sarkar. The cost of petrol and diesel has gone up by 2.2x since 2016-17 Sarkar. It doesn't make sense if you run 200 kilometers a day. If a factory is outside your city limits, or if your transportation platform on four-wheeler being taxis or four-wheeler being buses, it doesn't make sense to run your equipments on petrol, diesel, and CNG. So we fundamentally believe that the EV shift in India will be led by public transportation platforms to begin with. And like Sameer was saying, as charging infra comes forward, like GeoBP partnered with Blue Smart, they're setting up thousands of charging stations. Blue Smart today has the largest number of EV fast charging stations any company has in Delhi NCR. We have 800 charging stations already installed. So we fundamentally believe that consumers will ultimately buy EVs, and we see a lot of EV penetration happening now. We see so many cars in Bombay and Delhi NCR with the green number plates. It looks very good that people are now shifting to electric, but we firmly believe that it is also the role and responsibility of manufacturers to now start manufacturing electric cars, because a lot of things that I hear from the market or from the industry is that not too many electric models are out there. People don't have options. You only have limited options from manufacturers. So when manufacturers take this bet, like Tata took a big bet, they raised money from TPG and all that, $1 billion for manufacturing electric cars. So more and more manufacturers will start manufacturing electric cars. More and more people will start buying electric cars. That's economics 101. As the scale goes up, the cost comes down. Everybody is really worried about the battery cost, but what we learn in economics is as you manufacture something more, the cost of the product anyways comes down. And the FAME subsidy is available for transportation platforms like Blue Smart and etc. and etc. So and that's hardly utilized. So the FAME subsidy is for 55,000 cars. There are only about 1,850 cars registered under the FAME subsidy in Delhi NCR. So there is a massive playbook forward for ride-hailing companies, buses, electric buses that Mahesh is manufacturing and others are manufacturing. Huge opportunity in this space of manufacturing buses, manufacturing electric cars for the consumers, for giving a better mobility experience to the consumers of India. And we really believe that the industry will move forward and manufacture more and more electric vehicles so that players like Blue Smart and others will benefit. Even consumers, standalone consumers like you, can also buy electric cars.
Puneet touched upon a very interesting point about consumers and their willingness to go to EVs. Just wanted to understand from you, Sameer, what does your research say about consumers' intent to go for electric?
Yeah, Nirmal, so I come across many customers and also they send me queries about their anxieties and all. Now the trend in the customers are also changing. They are not worried about the initial cost of the vehicle. They are ready to pay it. The more concern is more about the battery life, the infrastructure, the charging points. And if I am able to go from one point to the distant places, not as a small city cars, like the electric vehicles are earlier propagated. So we need cars with a higher range, like a ZS EV new one we are giving with 460 kilometers range. So that type of vehicles they are expecting more. And so primarily the consumer trend is changing and they are willing to buy more electric vehicle, provided the anxiety for the infrastructure, for facilities, for battery drainage, for the long-term warranty. Like for MG, we are giving 8-year warranty. So they are really trouble-free, and they are really don't have to worry about the battery cost in these cases. And certain other technical things like in the water, in the flood, in Bombay areas, what will happen. So all these are IP67 protected. As long as you drive carefully, slowly, there's nothing going to happen. We can ensure.
Right. Mahesh, when it comes to your interaction with consumers, do you think that consumers are now perceiving EV as yesterday's tech?
Yeah. So in my last 8 years of experience, Nimble, I have seen a shift in thought process of the consumers. At the initial days, availability of charging and range was a concern. I think slowly, when you look at how it has transitioned, I think now the guys or the consumers are looking at a long life of batteries. What will happen after 10 years? By and large, the range is kind of addressed to a reasonable extent. And with the amount of charging stations coming in, it is picking up more. Safety is one of the issues which people are come up in mind, so which we need to keep in mind. But the segments are varying. For example, we talked about personal cars. This is like that. In the commercial space, let's look at three-wheelers. Let's look at buses and other areas. People look at long life more because, as Samir said, slowly in the commercial space, they just don't look at initial cost of acquisition. The total cost of ownership is more important. So we focus on making total cost of ownership. Okay, Puneet knows it. We did it in the commercial four-wheeler cars. Then I was lucky to work in the three-wheeler. Now I'm working on the bus segment. All these commercial segment makes EV much, much better. I always say there is a triple whammy. If you put an electric vehicle in a commercial application, it runs more and hence it becomes economical for the operator or a buyer because the operating cost is lower.
Right.
The second one is you reduce oil import because they consume more oil because every day they are running more. The third is the pollution you have removed so much. And just assume you are replacing all the commercial vehicle in a city, the impact on the emission in the city will be much higher because they are the one who are running more. So it's a national interest, it's an economic interest, and it's a personal choice by the customer. So the commercial vehicles will have a significant impact on the impact on the society to a large. So this segment will really propel faster, and it's the need of the apart from the personal segment we talked about.
Understood. Wonderful. Puneet, is that something that you've noticed also, the consumers seeing commercial experiencing EVs through commercial players like yours first, and then changing their mind and shifting their perspective?
Absolutely, like Mahesh said, that this is a play of TCO, total cost of ownership. And if you run an EV longer, your TCO gets better and better. So the longer you run an EV, your TCO keeps getting with every passing quarter, every passing year. The cost of alternate fuel is only going up. So we knew from day one, Mahesh, since his early days in EV, Samir and myself, we know that people will shift to EV eventually because of the cost of alternate fuel is going up. But also in terms of technology, EV is a much better technology. You have lesser moving parts compared to ICs, internal combustion engine vehicles, which have more moving parts. So the maintenance cost is also higher. The maintenance cost in EV is much lesser. That's one. In terms of technology play, now the cars are becoming digital assets. So the cars are becoming assets which are software, they're software on wheels. And with electric mobility, the life of the asset also becomes longer because the cars are built to last for 8 years. MG has these beautiful cars, which are like, they call them like internet on wheels and all that. So you see with every passing year, we will see cars which will have longer range, the cars which will have longer build to last. At the same time, there's a life 1 and life 2 also in perspective. You can change the battery after life 1, and then you have life 2. In case of IC cars, they are junk. They are a total sunk cost after life 1. You have to kind of discard them. But in case of EVs, we see in Tesla, we see overseas, so many models are there. We took test drive of so many cars, and we saw that there is a life 2 also there, which means that life 1 plus life 2, your TCO further gets lower. So there's a
Right.
significant TCO advantage with 2 lives involved. And even in the first life for transportation platforms, standalone transportation platforms like BlueSmart, it makes sense, or other ride-hailing platforms or public transportation platforms, it makes sense to fully shift to EVs.
I just wanted to understand, there is a need to educate users of EVs on the differences of living with an EV, on route planning, for example, right now. How is MG going about these things?
Yeah. So Nirmal, thanks. And also Puneet put a very good light on Second Life and other things, what we have already tied up with many companies for that now. And coming to your question, there are now users who are already environmental conscious, who are young and generation like you, and who are already using two-wheelers, for example, with the swappable battery and other things. So they know about EV. They are all aware about EV. And then there is a second set of people who are, new to this EV concept. They have a lot of anxieties. And for this, MG has spread out all the education among dealers. I myself lead an education program within engineering in MG, within all over the company, for more than 2,000 people. And we teach them from what is the difference from ICE to EV, and how this transition is going to happen, and how the technology is changing. And as Puneet also mentioned, the number of parts are going to be decreased a lot, but there's a lot of electronics involved. There's a lot of safety systems involved. And we are trying to coach them for all these things. How a battery system is having a triple structure system in the car, for example. So all these things are, this educational setup, we are not only doing within MG, we are now spreading it across through internet and other to the dealerships and our principals, so that they can also give it to the customers who are trying to use the EV first time, but they have a lot of cautions in their mind. So we create manuals, we create trainings. But as you said rightly, the young generation is catching up very fast, and they are owning, two-wheelers, and it is great to see this gap. I mean, this gap bridging up.
Right. Now we'll shift focus into the job sector, right? I think the internal combustion engine vehicle has been one of the primary drivers of job creation over the last, 120, 150 years, essentially, right? I just wanted to understand, will EVs be a net job creator, Mahesh?
Yeah. So, Nimal, we'll have to see the sector, automotive sector in India. Automotive sector in India is about 4.8 lakh crores, and it's about 7.5% of the GDP contribution to the manufacturing sector. About 37 million people work in the auto sector. There is a study saying that we will add about 10 million by 2030 by EV. Now, will it be the same skills? I don't believe it will be the same skill. There will be new set of skills like motors, power electronics. Incidentally, India is IT capital. So basically, EV is nothing but drive-by-wire and a lot of microprocessor and chips with software controlling almost completely every battery, motor, and the wheels together. So the set of competencies and skills will shift from let's say connecting rods and pistons and combustion to a battery and chemistry and power electronics. Now, we will have to look at different stages. At one stage, India is at a very nascent stage of adoption on, let's say, cars. We have about 22 cars per 1,000 when compared to about 600, 700 cars in Europe adoption. So we are at a very low scale of adoption. So when the adoption happens, we can do it directly with the new technology like EV, and hence we have upside to it. The downside to it is we need to look at how the existing force or the workforce can be reskilled and readapted into the new age technologies. And that is going to take a little bit of work from academic universities, industry, and even government. We are talking about how skill development and transition can be made smoothened by collaboration between the government, industry, and the academia. I think we need to play a role as a lead industrialists to make sure this transition is less painful, at the same time creates new jobs. I also believe Indian auto industry itself is a tipping point for export. India is giving a huge impetus on export, not only for auto industry, let's say agriculture, everything, defense, and many more sectors. And I believe in this transition to electric, India should not be looking at only addressing Indian market, but there is a huge potential to export to Europe with all the geopolitics, what's happening, and what we are doing free trade agreements with Australia, with UAE and many more, and I'm sure UK and Europe is on the pipeline. We'll have to look at a huge opportunity of manufacturing and creating IPRs from India and exporting to Europe, Australia, and many other countries. I think that will create additional huge potential for our talent to get deployed over a period of time.
Right. Puneet, I'm curious, how are you seeing this, because you essentially offer services on top of the electric vehicle ecosystem, right? So how are you seeing the job creation, the potential of electric vehicles here?
We're creating massive job opportunities, Nimble, for driver partners. Today, we have the largest fully electric ride-hailing fleet in India of 1,800 cars. So we are giving job opportunities to 3,000 drivers. Who we are creating inclusive and equitable economic opportunities for driver partners who can drive without the stress of asset ownership. Our business model is based on Wilfredo Pareto's principle. We don't allow drivers to own assets and bring the car on the table to earn from it. We fundamentally believe in India, like Mahesh rightly said, less than 3% Indian owns four-wheelers. So it is not the skill set of the driver to purchase a car and bring on the table to earn from it. We fundamentally believe that the core skill set of the driver is to drive with a capital D. So we bring the cars from global DFIs, with development financial institutions. They buy these cars and lease it to BlueSmart. BlueSmart then creates equitable opportunities for men and women to come forward, drive the car, earn a good income, more than what they were earning on the other incumbent platforms, without the stress of asset ownership. So today, we are creating job opportunities for 3,000, 3,500 drivers. Tomorrow, when we scale to about 4,000 cars, 4,500 cars, with new cars coming from Tata, from MG, and from BYD and others, we'll be able to create job opportunities for 10,000 drivers. And that number will only improve with each passing quarter, with each passing year. But what we're trying to do is that the driver should not be stressed. The driver should stick to their core skill set of driving. And also earn decently and much more than what they're earning on the other incumbent platforms. That's what we're trying to do from our side.
Right. Samir, just wanted a perspective from you on this, because, how should, primarily internal combustion engine focused companies shift and reskill towards an EV future?
Yeah, Nirmal. So I will fundamentally focus on the skill gap at the very basic level. Right directly from the engineering colleges. We don't have these skilled engineers of electric vehicles currently, because there is no curriculum for electric vehicle in the colleges. Right now also you can see I'm sitting in LD Engineering College, and we are donating the vehicles. We are tying up them with the electric vehicle courses and things from our experts. So that skill gap we are doing all across Gujarat right now with 8 or 10 colleges. And also we are trying to build up a skill force right from the colleges, so that when they come to industry, not only to our industry, to any industry in India, Tata, Mahindra, or anywhere, they are already knowledgeable about these systems. They know what electric vehicle is, because there is a huge gap between the academic and the automotive industry. And when these students comes to the college, the industry for job, they found internet cars, they found electric cars, IoT, connected, all these, so they found themselves lost in 1 or 2 years. So this is our endeavor. We have created many programs like MG Nurture for the students for having an internship. We have created EVpedia for spreading the EV education all across these things, as well as in our industry also. When we take the engineers, we train them for at least 1 or 2 years. Just for your example, like 2 years back, it was such a shortage. You have also, we have also read an article in Economic Times. There are no electric vehicle engineers available all across India. And that time I launched first JADAS EV with our GET from an engineering college. And with that GT, I alone, with no background of mine in the electric vehicle, I launched the first JADAS EV with help of our SAIC partners. So that was the time in 2019. But now slowly 2020, 21, we hired more experts from different industries. And now they are tuned to cars because they come from different backgrounds.
Right,
So
right.
that's the skill gap you can understand. We are
Absolutely.
fixing.
From what I'm hearing, the salaries have been multiplying also in the electric vehicle segment.
Sorry?
The salaries have been multiplying also.
Yes, it is multiplying. People are also leaving for different jobs. They get trained and they get jobs abroad very easily. They are going to Australia, they are going to Germany, they are going to different countries from our company within 2 years of experience.
Right.
So a lot of my engineers and managers are currently in Germany, US, and Australia.
Right. Mahesh, I'm curious about how engineering colleges and polytechnics should look at adapting their curriculum to suit the needs of manufacturers and the entire EV ecosystem. As somebody who's been doing this for a while, I thought that you'll have a unique perspective on what exactly needs to be done in terms of adapting courses that are already there to suit the needs.
See, currently what they teach and what I understand from them is there's a minor elective for electric vehicles because that's a part of electrical engineering department, and where they teach just the basics of electric vehicle, not the systems of EV car as such. So the students have to go more deep into the car systems and understand how the vehicle architecture is there. So let's say we take the Mahindra and Tata cars, which were converted from IC to electric vehicle. It has got our own technology and safety systems. So all this the students have to learn. But then we have also the cars like Nissan and from MG and all, which are developed electric vehicle, just like Tesla.
Okay.
So that platform wholly the students have to see where these vehicle architecture is there, where is motor is placed, where is battery is placed, how the packaging is done, how the high voltage battery is there at the bottom of the car. All those things. Ground clearance is very important in India because of high speed bumps.
Right.
So all this we need to incorporate into the courses for making them more practical engineers. And definitely the electric circuits and all. It is very important.
Right. Mahesh, would you like to add your perspective?
Yeah. So, Nimble, what I see on difference between IC and EV is definitely industry and academia has to cooperate and develop skills. What I saw in the past few years is IITs, many engineering colleges have started an multi-functional or multi-skill curriculum, which will build engineers towards electric mobility. The most important thing is going forward, most of the technologies are not single domain. I think it is important that we have multi-domain team consisting of software, embedded system, mechanical engineering, and let's say about these skills needs to do work together. I think India needs, and you can't be master of everything. So we'll have to build a team of different competencies in the industry. And then build the team of electric vehicles. So when you say electric vehicle curriculum, then taking only electronics engineers or software engineers alone will not help. We will have to build a multi-dimensional aspect of students who will be skilled enough to come and take some competence areas deep into it. The bigger challenge is this: when you have multi-skill competency people in the auto industry has to be open enough to address their different needs. For example, if I have to take a software engineer, his expectation, his or her expectation in software on the type of office, type of compensation, and type of, let's say, work-life balance or things like that is completely different from engineer who is doing a body or a trim or something. So the EV in the EV domain has actually put a challenge to the industry, how to accommodate and how to be flexible enough in accommodating multi-skills and addressing their aspirational needs. So this industry has to do in conjunction with the academia, and how do we build competency around academia in this?
Right, right. Puneet, just wanted to understand, what is the role of shared mobility in all of this? I mean, in terms of making sure that there is job creation, making sure that there is a higher level of understanding of what goes into electric mobility. What is the role of players like yours in this job creation work?
I think ride-hailing platforms like BlueSmart have a massive role and responsibility in creating job opportunities for this new decade. While the last decade saw a lot of driver partners buying these CNG cars in the circa of 2012, 2013, 14 to 2018, you saw thousands of drivers becoming micro entrepreneurs and purchasing these $10,000 cars over that decade. But now, as the cost of alternate fuel has substantially gone up, CNG, petrol, diesel continues to go up, the cost of automobile financing for these driver partners have also really shot up. The cost of ICs also have increased. The cars which were available for $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 today, the cost of those cars with BS6 coming in also has gone up. We see now the new decade. In this new decade, the drivers are not keen to buy cars anymore. And especially after COVID pandemic hit, the COVID pandemic events 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, thousands of drivers had to surrender the cars and give it back to the automobile leasing companies or financing companies because they could not pay the EMIs. What India went through, no other country went through, because India did not have the Airbnb of mobility concept. People were buying cars to drive on the taxi platforms or the other ride-hailing platforms. So we are seeing a massive shift in this new decade, and with our business model, we are encouraging drivers to stick to their core skill sets, where as a platform, BlueSmart does the entire platform work, creating charging infra, bringing electric cars, creating the entire paraphernalia, and a driver needs to be a gig worker who can earn the same amount what they were earning as a micro entrepreneur on other platforms, now has a good or a better quality of life. So we are creating thousands of drivers today are leaving the other incumbent platforms and joining BlueSmart because they are getting the entire EV ecosystem approach. And we are looking at the public transportation service from the entire EV ecosystem angle, because mobility play itself standalone doesn't make sense if you don't have control over charging infra. And if a standalone charging infra company, you are never going to make money because you have no visibility on the number of electric cars. Till you do not complete the entire EV ecosystem challenge, you are not going to address any of the challenges which are out there. So we thought that this is a great opportunity to create job opportunities for people who are setting up charging infra, people who are obviously team members of BlueSmart, but thousands of jobs, direct jobs will be created on the consumer front, which is where consumer sits in a car and a driver drives that car. So that is where we see role of BlueSmart and other platforms who are maybe coming up or maybe in the planning stage to come forward and create shared mobility. And like Mahesh also said, India owns the least number of four-wheelers in India. India has the lowest number of four-wheelers in the world. If you see China, it's got 275 cars per 1,000 people. India has 30 cars per 1,000 people. So we'll see the role of shared mobility, public transportation platform like BlueSmart or the Switch Mobility manufacturing electric buses. So use of electric buses, use of electric cars will drive the economy forward, and obviously in the shared manner.
Right, wonderful. One last question to all the panelists. What needs to happen, especially from a policy standpoint, to make electric mobility a net job creator?
Policy is very important, and we have been talking with government and many agencies since like 5 years actually. And many forums when I go, there's Renault, Nissan CEO and many other people, they are asking about what is the roadmap of government, and that is not very clear, although the statements keeps on coming about the policies and all. So this is very important, the policies in place and implementation. There's a lot of government subsidies coming from different states. FAME 2 is there, for certain segment. But now PLI scheme has come out for the all the OEMs and other non-OEMs, but need to be expedited and really thrust on this policy part. Secondly, the land for EVs. So we need manufacturing zones, special manufacturing zones for EVs, because this has certain requirements, especially the battery manufacturing. As you have seen, Maruti now putting tens of thousands of crores for the only battery manufacturing in Gujarat. So all these things require, a lot of availability of easy availability of land and taxes. And then we need some special incubation centers for like nurturing the programs, startups in these areas, and basically promoting with the exemption of taxes and for the e-rickshaw, e-carts, two-wheelers, all this. This year, we had a good growth in two-wheelers at 400%, but this need to continue at multifold. Then we will reach to the China stage where there are 99, 95% two-wheelers are electric vehicles.
Right.
Constitutes in the economy if comes with the whole thrust. I believe by 25, 27, you will see starting the landscape changing. Just like we see mobile suddenly came in India in 2010 and beyond. And before that, there was no mobiles. We are all talking on landline. So all this is going to happen. And certainly I agreed with Mahesh ji and Puneet. It requires a sea change in all these policies and infrastructure as well.
Mahesh, the same question to you. I think it's important to understand it from a job creation perspective as well. What is it that, from policy point of view, that the government needs to do to make this shift a net job creator?
I'll come to that, but just let's understand what's happening in EV industry. I think which is unprecedented and I have not seen in my life, and even my predecessors have said they have not seen in their life before, how government is supporting EV industry. Let's look at what's happening. Today we have a PLI scheme for automobile, which is about 25,000 or 26,000 crore. We have a PLI for advanced chemistry cell, which is about 18,000 crore. There is a PLI for semiconductor, which is 76,000 crore, and the FAME scheme is about 10,000 crore. So government has never ever in the last, after independence, worked with such a support to create manufacturing in India, to create jobs for actual industry, to get into this sector. Typically, industry is not being supported such a long time, but what's happening is a huge impetus and focus is coming from industry, from a government perspective, to support the industry, to create jobs and make in India and create IPR in India is going. So consequent to this, what happened in EV industry has been investing about close to $14 to $15 billion in EV alone, and to create a robust infrastructure. We are talking about even startups, it's on the highest investments happening in EV sector to the tune of 400 million last year. And there is a lot of things happening around. Now, what it will create? It will create economic activity. When economic activity grows up and the manufacturing goes up, it creates job directly or indirectly. What else can be done? What else? I think, to me, we are looking at make in India and supplying in India. I think let's look at the battery requirement of Europe alone. Let's look at the phase in which Europe is converting to electric. And by 2030, they may need more than 1,500 gigawatt hour of battery to meet all the European car manufacturing target which they have set. And they are have a plans to install, let's say, 800 to 900 gigawatt hour. So 600 to 700 gigawatt hour, or even if that can be exceeded, almost 1,000 gigawatt hour of battery has to be imported to Europe. Why would India not take this opportunity? We are good at softwares, we are good at embedded systems. Why can't all the power electronics can be sent from India? So if we can have a clear focus, which I'm seeing from Piyush Goyal ji, is giving a high focus on export. If that export focus is shifted towards EV, I think we will have a very robust job creation here, more than what what can be done if we can focus a little bit more than what it is. Having said that, I've said there are a lot of things done by government on policy for domestic. I'm only adding to saying that if anything more can be done to look at globe as a market, not just India as a market, then we'll completely excel and become the second largest EV producer in the world, next to China, obviously, if we focus on that.
Right. Puneet, any last comments in terms of policy interventions?
I think like Mahesh said and Sameer also said, future is electric. I think everybody understands it and we need to move forward aggressively as everybody, the stakeholder, manufacturers or ride-hailing platforms like Blue Smart, government. I think everybody is doing their bit. I think we have to go really, really more aggressive. India's import bill has shot up from $60 billion to $100 billion. That will keep going up if we don't shift to electric faster. So the time has come and we fundamentally believe that we are going to see sweeping changes now, like Mahesh pointed out. The time has come for the industry to move forward and completely go fully electric.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for your time, all the panelists. I think it's been a productive conversation in which a lot of interesting perspectives were packed. So thank you for your time. All right, that's a wrap on the conversation. I think what is clear is that the shift to EV mobility, electric mobility, is here and is real. I think that's something that all the three panelists have mentioned and reiterated. What is also clear is that there is much to be done in terms of job creation. As I said earlier, electric vehicles have a major role to play in a society like ours in terms of job creation, especially at a time when we are one of the youngest workforces in the world, which is where it's important for engineering colleges, for example, to come in and do an intervention, adapt their curriculum to suit the needs of the EV ecosystem. I think that's an important takeaway from today's conversation. Along with that, I think the government itself needs to accelerate some of the electric vehicle push that it is already onto. Along both of these things put together, I think we will be able to have a bright future both on the road and off it in terms of job creation. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, we are CoinDCX. We are not just a great place for crypto enthusiasts. We are also a great place to work. And how did we make it all happen? Everyone's the boss, the leader, the manager of their own work.
We are building a team of extremely smart and passionate individuals who are excited about building the future of finance.
We have built an excellent product and the team is making it better every day.
We made this happen. And this? This is Team CoinDCX signing off.
Hello, I'm Maloni Bhatt. Welcome to this special chat, which is part of ET Future of Jobs Summit on the skills and jobs that will shape tomorrow. According to the 9th edition of India Skills Report 2022, which was by VBox Talent along with CII, Sunstone University and TAG, the overall employability rate amongst Indian youth stands at 48.7%. So it's not even 50%. Now, this was from a survey of 3 lakh candidates. Those in industry will point out that where there are abundant job opportunities, there is a shortage of graduates with industry-relevant skills. This points to a widening skill gap in the Indian ecosystem of higher education. So how can we skill our youth for tomorrow's jobs? And are the skills that we impart even relevant? To talk to us about this, I have with me Abhishek Arora. He is the Executive Vice President and Business Head, Skills and Careers Business at NIIT Limited. In his 2 decades of experience, he's held various leadership positions across EdTech, FinTech, consumer internet, e-commerce, and financial services. Abhishek is an alumnus of the Indian School of Business at Hyderabad. Welcome, Abhishek.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks a lot. And it's a privilege for me to be part of this discussion. Really look forward for that.
And we look forward to the insights that you have to offer. So starting out, a recent report on India's demographic dividend by the CII argues that the rise in India's working age population, which is an expected addition of another 183 million people in the age group of 15 to 64 years between 2020 and 2015, lots of numbers, may become a liability for India in the absence of a skilled workforce. There are numerous programs, right? Like at the national level, at the state level, even at the institution level on skilling and reskilling. Do you think that these programs are delivering to industry requirements? And if they are not, then where is that gap?
Well, good question, Melanie, I would say. First of all, you're absolutely right that there is a significant increase in the workforce population, which is going to happen in India. But I don't see that as a liability. I see that as an opportunity. And why I say so is because if you look India as a geography, we are one of the largest, or in fact, the largest service economy in the globe, who is serving clients across the globe. And we are taking more and more business. The way the GDP is growing every year, if you look at the Government of India figures, we have to contribute more towards this growth. And with this increase in population of the workforce, which is going to enter into this space, we do have a challenge in terms of them being relevant. That's the only challenge we have. Now, why that challenge is because if you look the education system, which has come across for so many years, is rapidly changing. Government of India is investing so much efforts to do that. The new national education policy is bringing that transformation. And the graduates who are coming across, who are graduating now from the colleges, are also evolving as they used to be 10 years or 15 years ago. However, because of the rapid change in technology, which is happening globally, a lot of new technologies are coming every day. The way the businesses are run are becoming very different every now and then. I mean, 5 years ago, we never heard of, or 10 years ago, we never used to talk about things like fintech. We never used to talk about e-commerce. We never used to talk about health tech. We never used to talk about insurance tech and so on and so forth. These all things are evolving. And as these are evolving, the requirement or the necessity of individuals getting skilled into the newest technologies is also increasing. And that's where NIT comes into picture, where we have invested our strong pedagogy of last 40 years, where we have the expertise to build India's talent in various domains. We are leveraging that skill, and we have come up with a new age technology programs, a bunch of them, which enable learners to get deep skills into a particular domain. And these domains vary across a lot of skills in the new age technology space. Deep skill them, and with an immersive learning methodology, which is also very unique, which we use to enable these learners to become more successful, we are able to transform. We don't even just educate them, we transform them into a new individual, and they are able to become super successful. And just to give you an example, the way we teach is a very online driven platform with instructor-led training. And so far, whosoever we have taught has been able to get into a full-time employment, which approximately double the salary which they are generally able to acquire from campuses into the same corporates or the large corporate organizations which are working in this economy. And the skills are very, very industry relevant. They are not just skills which are generic in nature. They're very relevant. And therefore, as you mentioned in your conversation, that if you talk to employers, there's a lot of many opportunities which are available. But on the other side, there's youth who are not able to grab those opportunities because of lack of that skill. And that's where NIT comes into the picture, where we are acting as a bridge, which we call as the journey from a college to corporate is a distance you have to cover. And NIT acts as a bridge, which helps you to cross that river, get into a college, and the foundation job is not a job. I rather call it as the job, because this is something which makes a very strong foundation. And even in next 2 years down the line, the individual would be able to become more successful than his or her peer group who has come without a formal training or supplemental training, which we provide to them.
Right. I'm glad you brought this up, because the next question essentially is on that, that there is a great deal of emphasis globally on skills and jobs related to automation, to new age technologies, such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain, natural language processing. So, while NIIT is doing its bit, what are the kinds of programs or steps you believe that will be required to address this talent shortage in these technologies? Because we're already hearing a lot about that, both when it comes to, say, educational courses and also policy changes that are required.
Absolutely, Moni, absolutely bang on. And I rather use a different word for that. I don't call it as a talent shortage. I call it as a war of digital talent. And the reason I use that word is because, as I said, there is a lot of opportunity because every organization globally, not only in India, is transforming digitally. Everything is moving from a localized server to a cloud-based platform. Everything is moving from a traditional mainframe to more probably a data science and a machine learning or an artificial intelligence, as you mentioned, as the tools to build that. And every industry, not only like limited to a service industry, as I mean in the health industry, travel industry, e-commerce industry, finance, BFSI as a whole industry, everything is transforming. And therefore, we in last 1.5 years have launched a bunch of such programs. And to start with, we started with a program on software engineering and product engineering, which is the largest in demand, where we create the front-end and back-end developers into the ecosystem. And then we expanded that to machine learning and data sciences programs, which is so-called the coolest and the most aspirational job for the youth in the 21st century. And furthermore, we expanded the programs into cloud computing, cybersecurity, and digital marketing, which are the most popular and highest in demand programs in the current ecosystem. And these programs so far, I mean, because we just launched these programs in last 1.5 years, and we were testing and trying to find out how the industry responds to it. And so far we have got a super confident reply from them. All our graduates have got 100% placement. And the very important aspect which I want to emphasize is that they just don't get a job. They actually got the job, and they actually are able to get approximately 2x the salary, which their peers, as I mentioned earlier as well, who get a job into the same corporates who graduate out of that. So there's a strong testimony, there is a strong use case. And now as we enter into this financial year, we have strong plans to grow, to take this or amplify this growth altogether to the next level. And just to add to that, these technologies which we are talking about are something which are very, very relevant to today's ecosystem. For example, as I said, that everything is migrating to cloud as an example. Now, when everything migrates to cloud, now there's a lot of emphasis which comes to the data security as a whole. So that's why cybersecurity becomes very, very relevant. And the programs which we launched, we initially, the target segment which we put, or the eligibility to get into the programs was more towards the STEM graduates. But gradually we realized that there are people who are diploma holders who are also capable and interested to work into these domains. So we expanded our programs to the diploma holders as well, just to support Government of India's initiative to drive the digital transformation in India. And so far it has been giving excellent results for us.
All right. But Abhishek, this ecosystem for such a long time, policy-wise, do you envisage any particular change that is required? Or the policy that exists right now, the support that exists for it right now is enough?
See, the current national education policy, which has got revamped recently, I think it's a tremendous step in the right direction. Now, when you work in a large country like India, which has 1.5 billion people in there, there's a time to test the waters. I mean, the policy which has got recently is emphasizing a lot on digital transformation, on the newest technology skills. And I believe that's the perfect right step which the government has taken, and we are in complete support of that. We are invested into it, and therefore all our programs are designed and aligned towards the same growth or the same direction in which government is going. So I think it's all going in the absolutely right direction.
I wanted to talk about the cost of skilling and reskilling. There are a lot of people at various levels, mid-career level, start career level, who want to skill and reskill. But sometimes for a lot of people from tier 3, tier 4, towns, cities, the cost is prohibitive.
So see, the programs which we offer currently is not restrictive to people in tier 1 or tier 2 cities as a whole. These programs are spread across the pan-India as a geography. So anybody from every part of the India can enroll into these programs. And we understand that cost of these programs could be prohibitive. And therefore, if you look at our business model, it is very, very supportive to these individuals because we don't charge them the entire money upfront. We have partnered with financial institutions, more precisely partnered with fintechs, the technology-driven financial organizations, who are able to give them a lending facility, which they have to start pay back to them once they are graduated and once they get into a job. So we also provide them a moratorium for that period, which is very useful. So, you have to pay a minimum amount, which is the 10% of the course fee. And the reason we take that, so that, there's a vested interest of an individual to do something with us and actually get the program completed and get into the potential role which he or she is looking at. So you pay that initial 10% of the amount, and then we provide a lending to them. And then this is something which is complemented by not starting the EMI immediately. It's a moratorium period for about 4 months, or the duration of the program which is there. And once you get the job, you start paying. Now, if you look at the ROI calculation, I mean, it is massively high, and it's unparalleled in the industry right now. So you just invest, say, 1.5 L for the program, and then you're able to get a job which is paying you as high as 10 lakh rupees or even higher in certain cases. I mean, that's a phenomenal ROI for an individual, even from a tier 3, tier 4 city, by paying a minimal amount, then getting a loan, doing that moratorium, and then becoming super successful. So I don't think it's a deterrent for them. It's a great enabler for them.
Right. The rise of programs, the rise of institutes such as yours, does this also point to the fact that the system of education that we have in place right now in India is not enough?
See, education system in India is a very robust, and it's a very phenomenal system, I would believe. But education institutions have a different purpose. Education institutions are focused to make you a better human being. They liberate you as an individual. They give you a larger information and help you become a better individual as a whole. But when it comes across and you want to go into a job, education institutions' role is not to give you a job. Education institutions are designed for a different purpose, different motive. But when we come into the ecosystem, we are finding there is a gap between what employers want and where the learner is standing. And that's why I said that once you graduate out of a college and you have to go to a corporate, there is a bridge or there's a river in between which you have to cross. And an IT acts as a bridge to cover that distance from a college to corporate. And it is not that education institutions are short of something or they are not delivering. Education institutions have a purpose and a motto, and I believe they're completely fulfilling what they're doing. They give an excellent platform to all of us. We have all kind of gone through the education system in India or outside India, and that has been a founding stone for each one of us. And I believe that's doing the right thing. Yeah.
All right, Abhishek Arora, thank you so very much for your insights and your thoughts, and we wish you and your team the very best.
Thank you, Milani. Thank you so much for your time here today. It was really an honor for me to have a chat with the ET folks. It has given a great privilege for me to share my thoughts, and I'm sure it will really help the youth in this country to grow themselves and get into the part of the digital transformation which is happening and become super successful as they move forward.
We second that. Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Milani. Thanks a lot.
So welcome everybody to this panel discussion on jobs in Web3 and the Metaverse as part of the ET Future of Jobs Summit. I'm Shaili Singh from ET Prime and Heightened Technologies, the internet economy and related areas. Every technology disruption comes with both fear and opportunity. There could be risks, whether it will work, whether there'll be mass adoption, will it really be for the better, and the opportunity to do something new, create new growth engines and create new jobs. No disruption is possible without great talent. While it could lead to new jobs being created, it could also lead to a few disappearing as well, as we have seen over various disruptions over the last few decades. Web3 and Metaverse are two exciting new themes with tantalizing outcomes. Goldman Sachs calls Metaverse as an $8 trillion opportunity. America's largest bank, JP Morgan, just opened a branch in Metaverse. Nike is there, so are several other brands. JP Morgan expects $1 trillion worth of transactions happening via avatars in this version of internet. It's quite amazing. And when we talk of new versions of internet, Web3 promises to address the problems of the current web dominated by Google, Facebook, Apple, and other large corporations to a more friendly version empowering the users. Both of them create new ways of transacting, socializing, using the internet, collaborating, and more. And both need new skills and talent to make it work. And this is what we are here to discuss. Thanks a lot once again for all of you to join us. So we have Pareen Lathia, who's an entrepreneur, crypto analyst, blockchain enthusiast, and writer, and co-founder of Builders Tribe, a Web3 startup incubator which helps founders with fundraising and support. He is leveraging his experience and expertise in Web3 ecosystem to help upcoming builders every day. Thanks, Pareen, for joining us. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me here.
Next, we have great Pranav Sharma, founding partner, Woodstock Fund. Pranav is a seasoned professional with over 15 years of experience. At Woodstock, he's responsible for devising and executing strategies for the fund structure, people, deal flow, fundraising, investment management, governance, compliance, and risk management. Founded in 2019, Woodstock Fund is a multi-asset global investment fund focusing on investments in blockchain infrastructure, decentralized finance, tokenization, and Web3 protocols. Welcome, Pranav.
Thank you very much.
And we have Varun Sachdev, APAC Recruitment and Business Leader, NLB Services. NLB is headquartered in Atlanta with global operations, and it's a workforce solutions provider. Varun is a senior HR professional and business leader with extensive experience in building and leading high-performing talent acquisition and recruitment delivery teams across North America, Europe, APAC, and India. With over 15 years of experience, he has worked with several recruitment firms like Amtech Systems and Randstad in India. Great to have you, Varun.
Thank you.
Okay. So, I mean, these are obviously really huge, very big disruptions which are happening before us. So, Pranav, I would like to start with you first. As an investor, is there a lot of interest in Web3 and Metaverse kind of startups and ventures? What's the broad opportunity for investors, founders, and employees, I mean, as you see it in India and globally?
So Shelly, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And so let me sort of zoom out and look at it from a very macro perspective. And so let's say if you look at from India perspective, that India is, as a country, has a huge English-speaking, very young talent, which is out there and wants to build and also wants to achieve a lot more. So it just creates a very fertile ground for entrepreneurship, enterprising to happen on a massive scale. There are only as many people who can work with Infosys, TCS, Google, Apple, whatever you call it. And eventually a lot more people will end up, being self-employed in many ways. So just look at it from, this is point number one. Point number two is if you look at from a Web3/Metaverse perspective, these are fundamentally open technologies and open economics. So it creates a space wherein you have such a massive playground, which is like a 3D playground in which you can paint whatever you want to paint. So it creates a space in which, based upon your unique talent, you can express and you can create valuable products for a global audience. And sitting in your hometown, home country, and probably in your home office, or let's say in your bed, home, whatever you call it, right? Third thing is that the entry barrier to create a phenomenal product in this space is so low. You can practically do this with like 25,000 rupees of laptop with a data connection, which is the cheapest in the world right now, thanks to Jio. And essentially, collaborate with people across the globe and bring about the best of your capabilities through your engineering talent, or let's say enterprising talent out to build it out. So just looking at these 3-4 things, there are many more things. It makes a great space for a lot of interest to come in, and we are seeing a lot of organic interest, no matter what the market conditions. We have seen what has happened over the past 3 days in the markets, but still a lot of interest continues to remain, and a lot of talented people continue to find home into this space because of these fundamentals.
That's really very interesting and an absolutely new canvas for people to paint on. Varun, in hiring mandates that you get, what percentage are for the new age skills and some of the skills that might be relevant for Metaverse and Web3?
So when we talk about from a talent acquisition or recruitment perspective, we already have 3D designers, software developers, architects, game developers, cybersecurity experts, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, experts working on Metaverse. Apart from the tech stack point, the standpoint, we also, since it is all about the user experience, There are opportunities for creative designers as well, sound engineers, people who basically work at the back end and provide a better user experience. So people with knowledge of gaming softwares like Unity or 3D software such as Maya or other platforms available, they are very in high demand at this point of time when it comes to talent acquisition for Metaverse.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And taking talent from gaming and other interests, probably some of those skills are very relevant for 3D development. Probably gaming companies have been doing it. Pareen, what are the kind of ventures that you are incubating, and in the Metaverse Web3 space, what is it that's driving the early entrepreneurs?
So, what Pranav said sets a very good background, because there is talent all across the world, and people who are building these products are not just building for their own jurisdiction anymore.
Yeah.
Also, they are not working with people in their own jurisdiction anymore. The world has actually become flat now, right? And this is a great leveler for people in India today. What we are seeing essentially in Metaverse is the base infra level layer being built at this stage. Think of something like a sandbox or a Decentraland, where you have the base layer, which is land parcels, and then people buy that. The economics and the structure is very similar to what we see in the physical space. It is limited supply real estate that is traded in the free market. On top of it, the possibilities just are unlimited. So some of the ventures that we are seeing right now is people who are trying to design identities inside Metaverse. We don't know what the identity will be because I don't want to talk to a bot, right? So Sybil resistance is probably one of the biggest problems to be solved to enable us to get these first million people in the Metaverse. Some of the projects that we are seeing are in terms of getting people engaged in the Metaverse, because yes, you get into Decentraland, but what do you do after that, right? So there are people who are designing modules, or you can say composable blocks is what we call them, which you can actually transport inside a Metaverse and say, okay, now this becomes my art gallery. Now this becomes my office. Now this becomes my help desk. Or now this becomes my concert playground. And the third vertical that we are seeing good traction in is to make sure that there is some kind of a transactional exchange happening inside based on some kind of a reputation. So how do you curate people? I don't allow everyone to come into my house, right? So how do I curate who comes to my house in the Metaverse? This curation is the third level that we are seeing here. So broadly categorizing, that's the play.
So there are these startups which are working across the value chain in terms of probably building avatars to creating some products or solutions in various metaverses.
Yeah, definitely. They are creating. So this, imagine if there is a barren land today, and we want to create a city.
Yeah.
What will we do?
Okay.
First, what we will do is we'll agree on the fact that, okay, this is the land. This is where the boundary of the city is. Now let us distribute the land between, let's say, 1,000 few early adopters who've come here. So that's the stage where we are today. Now the land has been divided. What do you do?
Yeah.
Someone builds a shop, someone builds a factory, someone builds a concert place. This is where the action is right now. There are, of course, various new metaverses being built in themselves.
Yeah.
So there is a theory that says there will be multiple metaverses, and people will traverse between them very easily with a singular identity, which basically means you could have a metaverse for music lovers, you could have metaverse for developers, you could have metaverse for cyclists, you could have metaverse for something else. We don't know how this is going to pan out as of now. It's pretty early, but people are experimenting with all sorts of things. But in every metaverse, one thing is very common.
Yeah.
We are looking at refining what activities to be done, and what are the basic ground rules, like what are the social constructs that we have today, that when I meet you, I know I have to greet you in this way, I have to make sure that I don't get too close to you, there's private space. These social constructs don't exist in metaverse. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing, because these are the opportunities that these entrepreneurs end up solving, right? So
Varun, this barren digital space now ground up being populated by like say physical bank branch into a metaverse branch in the metaverse. So how many jobs will this create, this barren space? I mean, are there any numbers? I know it's really probably just too many elements to it, but any top of the mind numbers or anything?
Very difficult to talk about exact numbers or tentative numbers as well. But if we just go with the Gartner's study, which basically predicts that by 2026, 25% of the people will be spending at least 1 hour a day on metaverse. So this will lead to plethora of business opportunities. And right now we are living in a digital world, and it's 3D. So, and which is basically governed by three Ds again, namely decentralization, development, and design. And these things will also reflect in the talent market as well. So in future, what will happen, and I think it has already started happening, global opportunities, global talent pool. It will be all about hiring the talent, which basically can deliver the outcome for a particular project or the expected outcome. And also when it comes to talent acquisition, I personally feel that the developers and the technocrats would basically form a core layer of talent for the organization, which basically need to scale up in future. And backed by creative designers and the backend people who would give the right kind of user experience to the users. And plus, if you talk about the number of opportunities available, enormous opportunity would be available, from the job perspective in metaverse.
Pranav, when you are looking at some of these ideas as an investor, so are you also looking at, okay, where's the talent pool? I mean, it's like you have to create something. You don't really have millions of, 3D designers out there or even AI experts out there. So, but everybody wants to do that. So what's your take on after interacting with some of the companies and all?
So I think the space is very early. I'll just pick it up from what Pareen mentioned. The space is very early. Let's say, even if you look at, let's say, land parcels and what is getting built, it's very pixelated. It's almost like the days of Contra and Mario, right? I'm not saying that they were bad games. They really got us, I'm sure all of us played at one point and really enjoyed those games. But we are getting into immersive spaces. And when you're talking about Unity and Real, all of these are like phenomenal engines for building those kind of participative, decentralized games over a span of time, right? So there's a lot of action which is happening to get the fundamental building blocks in place. So when we look at these startups and these opportunities, right now we are at the tooling level when we are investing, let's say as a fund, or let's say as in our capacity, and we see that a lot of these fundamental building blocks will become the pathways for more nuanced applications and white spaces to be addressed over a span of time. And that is where the real value will emerge. So the fundamental building blocks like tooling becomes your bedrock. And then your application is your games, your AAA games, your classic games. And essentially that gamification, the bigger space is gamification, which sort of intersects between the virtual world and the real world. And which is where phenomenal value will be created for a span of time. So what we are looking at, this is very thesis focused. And then we go deeper into what kind of problem would be valuable in the medium to short term. I would say medium to long term, I'm sorry. And then essentially, what is the right kind of talent which is necessary to unlock that value? And whether the talent is at the right time, at the right place, in the right composition, and at the right valuation to take the journey forward. So there's a lot of first principle thinking that goes behind the scene to make this happen. So, yeah.
That's interesting, a lot of tooling required. But Pareen, what would your advice be to some of the people who might be interested in incubating a venture, or even someone else in college today, say, wants to look at a career in the metaverse space or Web3. So what will you advise him or her?
For anyone who wants to start a venture in the metaverse, essential thing to look at is figure out what are the coordination problems here. Of course, tooling is the biggest thing right now. If I just to continue the analogy here, if there is a barren land and now we want to build a shop on this, first thing you will need is, let's say, cement. First thing you will need is tools. You will need a crane. You will need a drill machine. Right? Shovels, basically.
Yeah.
So if metaverse is a gold rush, first is get the shovels. Otherwise, there's no gold there. That's definitely going to last for a few years from now. In terms of the mindset itself, lot of founders can't think globally. This is a coordination problem. In a way, Instagram is already a metaverse. In a way, Zoom is already a metaverse. We are in some kind of a metaverse. It's just low resolution. When we put an Oculus, it becomes very high resolution. That's what we want to live in. But essentially, what are we solving here? We are solving a coordination problem. And as long as we look at global coordination problem solving, this venture succeeds. So whether you want to figure out how to gather a bunch of, let's say, cyclists who are going to hang out in a particular property in a metaverse and discuss their gear, or whether you want to get people who want to just sit around a fire and have a chat, but are spread across the world. They can't do it physically. These are the two things that are to be solved for. Most of the coordination right now is happening inside Discord. Discord is the tool that most of the Web3 community uses. So the coordination is there. It's a very low resolution metaverse. If we were to look at that, Discord is slightly complicated Telegram, but Discord is a very low resolution metaverse. The moment we move on to, let's say, Sandbox or Decentralization, it's slightly higher resolution. The moment we put an Oculus, it's very high resolution metaverse that you are getting into. The resolution really doesn't matter. What matters is how are you solving the coordination problem? If my family can really coordinate on a WhatsApp group, that's the metaverse that we want to live on. We don't want to put that Oculus just to communicate to my dad that, hey, I'm going to be late, right? That's not what's needed here. So resolution is one side of it, but coordination and tooling is probably the biggest right now. In terms of getting jobs inside metaverse, if people are not building, but just looking at jobs inside metaverse, I think the way to think about it is to look at values and communities, right? Today, if I believe in X, Y, Z thing, or 3 of my values, it's very hard to find people who believe in similar things, right? It's very hard to find and connect with them. Think of meetup.com that existed. What did that do? It just enabled people with common values and common beliefs to come and gather in one place. That's what metaverse is going to do. So if you find people who align with your values inside Discord, inside Sandbox, inside absolutely any place that you can find, organize them. And that is where the jobs will get created, because someone is going to organize these people, and then they will create some value which will be marketed out there, right? That is how businesses were built about 100 years ago as well. People gathered and said, okay, this is needed in our village. Now, if this is needed in our village, all of us get together and put up a factory, because I can't do it alone and you can't do it alone.
That's pretty interesting. Pranav mentioned about the tools, you mentioned about the global coordination and how it will all be brought together to, kick off keep building the building blocks of it and create something absolutely new. Varun, a lot of companies are looking at hiring Web3 and Metaverse professionals to get their own game going in the space. But what are their key concerns? I mean, what is it that they are worried about?
If you talk about the key concerns, they are very relevant to what other organizations or other domains of the industry are facing. It is about talent availability. And for this particular innovative domain, the talent has to be built, and also what talent is available right now in the market that has to be upskilled or reskilled as well. Because when we talk about the onset of metaverse, the staffing needs in the digital technologies like what I mentioned earlier, artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, distributed ledgers, these, developers and specialist engineers, they are very high in demand, but that talent pool is not available in the market. So organization operating in this domain, they have to probably have a multi-dimensional approach, first to start thinking about laterally hiring the resources and upskilling and reskilling them to make sure that they have the skills what is required for the expected outcome. Second, think long term and build talent for future as well, which basically would have data analytics, augmented reality, VR, MR, those kind of skills, so that with the opportunities growing in number, the talent pool is also available for the same. And this needs to happen at the global level, not only in India, but to make it a reality and a success, it has to happen globally.
So one of the things with some of these technologies is you can reach out to an expert anywhere in the world to, much easier access to talent. Are companies actually doing that?
Absolutely.
I mean,
yes, they are. Even in fact, I spoke about that, the future is all about global opportunities and global talent pool available. It would not matter that where the talent is physically located, as long as the person is able to deliver the expected outcome, the companies are ready to look at that talent pool and they're hiring as well. And this will continue to evolve further.
Pranav, Metaverse idea has been there for a long time. And this Snow Cash book back in the 90s introduced us to the term. Then the gaming companies, Second Life, and then others were among the early adopters of it. But it was somewhere in the mainstream, it was born in the pandemic, like driven by Mark Zuckerberg. So now he sees it as a future of internet itself. And if we look at our lockdown era, lockdown time lives and that period, hopefully there won't be any more lockdowns, but if we look at that, it seems very relevant. It takes our digital interactions even further. We'll be even far richer interactions on these platforms. Like we could have our avatars meeting, and that could be in Metaverse and all. But how much of it is hype? I mean, as we come out of the pandemic and all, of course, still, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they are betting heavily, betting heavily on the space. But do you see any hype also? Or is it, that's how disruptions are?
So definitely there is hype. There is hype, and all I can share here is that there is also substance. So let me sort of decode this in terms of what could be hype and what could be substance. So let's say if you look at let's say the social shift, which is so Gen Z has a very peculiar trait. I'm generalizing for the audience, but I'm just saying that they want their talent to be given a fair share of expression. And expression means that it could be financial value, it could be even recognition, if nothing else. And this is non-negotiable for them. And this is becoming an increasing trend. And the thing is that in the real world, there are limitations. So definitely in the virtual world, you find a lot more expression. And you also land up, meeting with a lot of people in a very different context. And which is one of the reasons why Facebook became not only a platform for Harvard students to connect, but became a global phenomena wherein people actually landed up meeting with partners and they got married. Right. So there is a certain social innate need that is getting surfaced in this very boundaryless, borderless kind of a space which is emerging. So this is something which is going to stay. This is substance. The other thing of substance is that the hardware and even when you talk about compute capacity, or even let's from AR VR experiential capacity perspective, the hardware has evolved a lot. Even AR VR technology and the studios have evolved a lot, to an extent that gaming has become a lot more global phenomena wherein people can play games sitting anywhere in the world, and essentially also trade items. So there is also significant commerce which has already begun in many ways. Now, what is happening? What we are seeing here now, this is something which is a fact. Now, what we are seeing as a further addition to the substance is that the gaming community has been always focused on consuming something and buying, right? And then free games emerged, Fortnite, etc. Now it is about, play to earn. So I'm not a big fan of play to earn, but I just want to make a point that if you have a possibility of utilizing your data, or let's say participating and making some money, or even contributing and having your assets, which can be sort of, going from point A to point B in a virtual space, you have many more pathways to participate through commercial angle that attracts brands, that attracts, consumers, that creates marketing 3.0, if I may put it in a different way. And in that context, this is substance. So this is here to stay. Now, what is definitely, I would say, hype is that, you would see that overnight everything will happen. Suddenly all the brands would be there. No, sorry. Brands have, certain constraints. They have reputation, they have certain positioning, they want a certain kind of consumer base. They have certain compliances to follow. They have, many of them are listed in stock markets. There are regulatory frameworks which are still evolving and emerging. So this will be a journey for brands to be there and for virtual world to become like one big shopping mall, or let's say experiential center, or whichever way you look at it, right? The other thing of substance would be that the hype around pricing, right? So a lot of these pricing are some of, let's say, NFTs, etc., could be anti-gravity. Now, technically, a lot of these will see a lot of semblance over a span of time and become essential components of metaverse. So like somebody was explaining it very beautifully that, let's say, if you want to like simply look at metaverse, it's like NFTs are fundamentally things that you keep in a house. And, metaverse is your like house where you're experiencing, staying in that, specific space. So a lot of, over a span of time, as the time will go by, a lot of, things which are of substance will flourish, and a lot of, interesting pathways from investing, job creation perspective will emerge. A lot of things which are hype will either die down or morph into something else, which will be of substance.
That's very interesting, actually. In fact, if we look back, technology after technology or several platforms have gone through that cycle. 50 years back, ATMs were a hype. So much of a necessity and all ubiquitous follower today. That curve is always there. What will you tell, say, someone looking, someone in college reading about it and looking for a job, or someone in mid-20s to trying to switch streams? What would your advice be? I mean, should we be concerned? It might just be a hype and let's stay away from it, or they should still catch it early?
So if this, let's say, so my response would be that it's almost like learning Java when Y2K happened, right? So you don't learn Java when Y2K is happening. You learn at least 5 to 7 years earlier before the Y2K happens. So I'm not saying that you can predict Y2K, but you can definitely say that as more and more technology is getting built, there'll be some moments of crisis and there'll be moments of value creation. So the point here is that, let's say, if let's say we are seeing that the world is becoming a lot more immersive and lot more collaborative, lot more connected and coordinated, like the way Pareen was mentioning, and lot more opportunities are organically getting created as brands seek newer pathways to attract Gen Z and various other people who want to spend 7 to 8 hours per day at least in virtual space, whether it is through Zoom calls or let's say on Facebook or Instagram, etc. Then there is a convergence which is happening on a massive scale. So the point is that you got to scale up now. You got to suit up now. You got to scale up now, and essentially be ready and be ahead of the curve, so that when you are there, you are in many ways, there to capture the value. Because once it becomes commoditized, it becomes a business usual, like the way ATM example that you gave, you will be just a consumer. So I just keep on telling people that you have 3 options as on date. One option is that you can build. Second option is you can enable. Third option is you can consume. And the only factor is time. As the time will go by, the option of building will taken away from you. Then as you further go down the line of time, the option of enabling will also be taken away from you. You will only become a consumer. So if you're starting early, you also have an opportunity to build, and you have an opportunity to enable the larger ecosystem. And of course, you become a consumer in any case by default over a span of time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In fact, Pareen, for a lot of the youngsters and even mid-career professionals, they would be keeping an eye on this, and probably the mid-career ones would be at least some courses to metaverse spaces. So do you have any case study or something like that to share how hiring was done in one of your Web3 incubated ventures?
Let me give you a very tangible example here. We are working with a founder who's building a metaverse where every song has a different feel, right? So essentially, you are not only listening to the song, but you are experiencing the song. And this is one resolution higher than what we do with, let's say, YouTube or Spotify. It's not a metaverse in itself, but what they're doing is they're opening up songs to have an experience around them. And people who buy this will be much more expensive than let's say buying a song on Spotify, right? Or listening to a song on Spotify, not buying. But essentially, when this happens, you also have a super fan community that's created around it, right? The way they are going about doing this is by actually hiring people who are super fans to work inside this metaverse. So if you are an Indian Ocean super fan today, you would want to design this metaverse. So they're hiring designers inside the metaverse to build this song experience for Indian Ocean, right? And of course, the revenue, because there is crypto economics, this revenue is being shared. This is just one of the examples. One of the projects that we are working with, they're building a developer ecosystem. So this ecosystem essentially is going to start with all the Web3 projects. Essentially, Web3 projects are buying land inside this and setting up their support desk and their jobs desk. So imagine two people from Ethereum, Polygon, Polkadot, Solana, sitting inside this metaverse and answering developers' queries and giving them jobs. This interaction usually happen through either email or support, or maybe even a phone call for that matter. But this takes the resolution much higher. Also, this solves the coordination problem because you know how many people are there in terms of when you are experiencing it. You're not told wait for 2 minutes, we will reply, or you're not waiting for an email to say, okay, I don't know when they will reply. You can actually see that there is a big line. I don't understand in this line right now. Let me just get out of this. I will come back here much later. And enabling this in itself is these are very, very early experiments at this stage, and very high risk experiments. But these experiments are going to define what really works and what doesn't work. Certain aspects will not work. Certain aspects will really take off, and they will refine as founders. But essentially, when we look at these plays, most of these plays provide jobs just like a normal job board, but the resolution goes higher. The coordination problems are solved. You're not waiting for the recruiter's email here. You're talking to them, sitting across the room.
Okay, that's interesting. Varun, where do you source talent from? I mean, will it be within the metaverse? That's pretty interesting that Varun mentioned. But what are the kind of skills that you're looking for? And can you also have some idea on compensation? Is it similar to the digital transformation, what the digital transformation talent, that kind of compensation, or is it somewhat different or higher or lower?
At this point of time, if I have to answer, the compensation expectation is a little similar or probably a notch higher than what we see for digital transformation resources. Also, when we talk about sourcing or finding the right talent, it has to be a concept where what I mentioned earlier, that building talent, because right now if we see that the talent is not available, so we need to build talent for future as well. And we need to probably go for campus to corporate journey, wherein we define the customized curriculum, we define the training programs to ensure that people graduating from the colleges, they are probably put in a structured program, and over the period of time they become deployable for the projects. Simultaneously, the future of talent is all about building talent communities, wherein you start engaging with the talent pool proactively, not only at a point of time when you have open positions. you start engaging with the pool proactively. You ensure that you share the vision and the mission of the organization with them, and slowly and gradually convert the passive talent into an active talent for an organization, again over the period of time. It doesn't happen in a day or two. It's a journey, as Pareen mentioned earlier, as Pranav mentioned, that it's a journey. It's going to take some time to become a reality. And also similarly, the candidate journey and the candidate experience will be evolving throughout this journey. And so the sourcing will again become a combination of multiple approaches. One is building the talent. Second is upskilling and reskilling the existing talent pool, what is available in the market. And third, getting them into a cohort model, which is building communities where you are proactively engaging with them.
And do you have any perspective on industry level demand supply gap? There's obviously a huge shortage of engineers. The attrition among in IT companies is really crazy. But any numbers we have around Metaverse and Web3?
If we talk about, again, the skills, what we are recruiting for Metaverse and Web3, they are very similar to what, the organizations are recruiting for digital transformation. And there is a massive shortage of talent in the market. Right now, if I just refer to the studies done by Big Fours, there is a 40% talent shortage available in the market right now, as compared to, what is expected and which can be consumed by the current work which is available. And I'm sure when we talk about future, the growth, what we are seeing around us will absolutely convert, more job opportunities. And that's the reason, a lot of organizations have started talking about that, we need to build the talent as well, because otherwise, this problem will keep on, growing in future. And there might be a point of time where, the talent shortage, what we see at 40% might be at, 60 or 70% as well in future.
Wow, it seems to be a great time to be an engineer, so developer in this space.
Yeah.
So some a couple of common questions to all of you. Pranav, starting with you, what kind of new jobs will be created, and which jobs might disappear, if any, in Web3 and Metaverse?
I think so. One is definitely developers, as in anything which is related to technology. Especially one part of technology is fundamental coding and building the behind the scenes unromantic part, which is going to be extremely valuable. It continue to be valuable. The other part is more about user experience and design, which can translate all the way till let's say studios, building more immersive gaming and designs and so on and so forth. So so that is a spectrum that will gain a lot of value over a span of time. And as was being pointed out earlier, this demand will not only come from startups, but will also come from brands and enterprises a lot more. And definitely a lot more premium will be on skilling, upskilling, cross-skilling, and so on and so forth. And the second part is marketing and business development. So definitely consumers are also shifting. The behavior shift is happening, but the behavior shift does not happen overnight. So there'll be some people who will be like the Pied Piper of Hamelin in this case, and who will be leading people to come into the metaverse. And these are the people who will become the marketing gurus or the business development gurus of tomorrow. So there's definitely a need for such people to lead people into the metaverse, so that the consumers, especially I'm talking about consumers and brands, to come into metaverse. I think the third one, which is well neglected, and I'm just taking this leaf from what Pareen mentioned, is a global mindset. So people who have a global mindset and who can actually create collaborative spaces across various I would say countries, and work with multiple cultures, and in a very systematic I would say distributed way, would be in high demand. And they will be the general managers of tomorrow in this space. And so in that sense, my sense is that if all of this is going to change, then definitely on the engineering side, when it comes to curriculum, and also on the MBA side on the curriculum, there'll be a major shift that we'll see over the next few years.
Oh, that's interesting. Pareen, anything to add to this in terms of what jobs might be created and what might disappear?
I don't think anything is going to disappear, so to speak. This is just a way to make our coordination and communication way more effective. I think what we are probably, I think Pranav covered everything that's there. One job that I think is going to be very clear here is someone who designs the culture. That's probably something that we haven't got to as yet. Of course, we know, AR, VR engineers and tech side, everything is required. But one important thing, why would we leave such a beautiful place out here with nice sun and moon to go into metaverse? The only answer that I can think of right now, and this may be a personal bias, is because there is culture possible there. I hardly relate to my neighbor today. I can relate to someone sitting halfway across the world way better because my value system aligns, right? And that culture needs to be managed. So this is the role, of maybe a priest, or maybe if you were to say someone who is an elder in the village. So now we have the village, we are able to eat, we have the roof, we have everything built, we have maybe fun activities to be done. But why do I stay in that village now? I would come in for the experience, but I would stay probably for the culture, and someone would need to manage that culture as well. This is what was called marketing, probably earlier, is going to transform into culture now. No one is going to market and sell, because I don't want people to sell it to me. But hey, if I align with your values, if you're buying this product, maybe it helps me as well. If you're into fitness and you bought this product, maybe it works for me. That's culture, right? Which is probably going to gain way more prominence in the metaverse than we have in the physical space, because there are constraints in the physical space, which metaverse actually eliminates.
Shelly, I also want to add something to what Pranav and Kareen just mentioned, that from my perspective, the skills which will be very relevant and in demand, for the next few years would definitely be, related to this artificial intelligence, machine learning, user experience designing, cloud computing, cybersecurity, data analytics, data science, and something which probably we can see decimating or eliminated as well would be anything to do with the recurring, jobs. Something which requires, a low end or, repetitive task, they will be automated. And those resources will have to be upskilled, reskilled, so that they can probably do something else, which is much more relevant and can add a value to the overall ecosystem. That's what I think from my perspective will happen.
Yeah, but obviously, I mean, even the if you look at the past, like the transcription services, now you have machines doing it, so we don't need a lot of that talent pool. A lot of IT companies used to employ a lot of people for testing software. Now that again, the machines are taking over some of those jobs. So I guess some of those shifts will keep happening as we move on. So in other words, Web3 comes with a lot of promise of democratizing the internet, shifting power from large companies, Facebook, Google, Apple, to users. So reality might be somewhere in between. Of course, this is slightly aside from the jobs itself, but what's your take on it? Kareen, you'd like to go first on it?
I think what Web3 comes in with is the economic side. That's mostly the leveler that we see here. Think of metaverse and eliminate the economics, and all you have is a game, right? So yes, we have enough games today, which are metaverses, right? And people are actually spending enough time inside these games. Game plus economics is what metaverse is, because in a game, I really can't control most of the physical elements today. In the game, I can't control. It's not a free market, so to speak, right? So, and our entire economics today is based on Keynesian free markets, right? So, essentially, when we look at free markets and put in gaming, that's what metaverse is going to be.
Web3 comes with big promise. This is slightly aside from the jobs itself, but the larger thing. Web3 comes with a lot of promise of democratizing internet, shifting power from larger companies, Facebook, Google, Apple, to users. So reality might be somewhere in between. How do you see it? Any comments on it?
As Pareen mentioned that, we don't know what exactly the future will hold, and how and what size of organization would absolutely make sense for this industry. But at this point of time, it is all about just experiencing this journey and just be a part of it. That's what I would like to say from my side.
Green, you wanted to add something? We lost in between.
Yeah. So I was just saying that the Web3 component is what makes Metaverse. When we look at metaverses, there are going to be two types of metaverse. One is closed, where everything is owned by a centralized entity. That's essentially a game. Right? The physical rules are defined by someone else. The economic rules are defined by someone else. The economics is controlled by someone else. And you're playing that. It's mostly a game. When it comes to open metaverses, which is what we are talking about in Web3, open metaverses are free markets. And these free markets is what make it very interesting, because you don't want to live in a village where the land is already owned by someone else and you're building on top of that. Someday they might just kick you out of that, right? So what we are looking at here in terms of level playing field is that from the scratch, it's a free market. So when you look at Decentraland, you could go way back in 2018 and buy that land for a really, really tiny price compared to what it is available today, because you are early, right? And you're taking that risk. You are a risk taker, so you get a cheaper price, which is free market economics that Web3 brings in into gaming, and that becomes the metaverse.
Pranav, thoughts on this?
So definitely there's a spectrum, and somewhere the reality is somewhere in the middle. Completely agree with you, because and it is also about where we are in the stage of evolution. I mean, as humanity, we go through the cycles of wanting complete liberal, you can say, experience of things, and on the other side, we want to be led by an individual who we see as Masiha or leader or whatever you call it, right? So right now we are somewhere getting to that point wherein we want to be a lot more liberal in terms of experience, in terms of ownership of data, in terms of our own intention to monetize. So many times people confuse that these technologies are something new. It is essentially, many of these technologies existed previously. It is just because the social shift is happening, it is creating a massive ground for adoption of these technologies, right? So when we are saying that we are somewhere in the middle of centralization and decentralization, what we are seeing is that a lot of these existing paradigms will get challenged. That means that as these existing structures like centralized organization, there are significant question marks. Either they will evolve or they will break, right? And as they break or as they evolve, there'll be phenomenal opportunities that will get created. Now, this is already happening in US. Now, for example, Google called a town hall to figure out that why are so many engineers leaving for crypto blockchain startups. And essentially, they're also doing their own thing internally, Apple and a bunch of other people and IBM and so on and so forth, right? Now, what is happening in US is a symptom of what will happen globally, right? Because essentially what we have all subscribed to as largely as a global play or as humanity is a capitalist form of operating, ourselves. So my prognosis is very simple, that if, let's say, this is the audience here is people who are seeking jobs or seeking conviction to jump into the space or wait it out, they should only look at what's happening in US and what is happening with the most talented people out there, and what will create a ground for people to shift. Now, in that context, when we are talking about a spectrum between decentralization and centralization, they've become part of the journey of making it a lot more decentralized over a span of time, so that they unlock value while that journey happens, because this is what people are seeking.
That's very interesting. Pranav, Pareen, Varun, thanks a lot. It was really great. And looking for any job seeker or even mid-career engineer or non-engineer looking for opportunities, I'm sure there's no dearth of it. It's just 40% shortage, as Varun mentioned, or probably rising. And then global coordination, as Pareen mentioned, and you mentioned about the tools that might be, so many tools will be required to build up the whole ecosystem. So it's good time to be a Metaverse Web3 professional. Great discussion. Thanks a lot. Thanks once again for your time, and look forward to meeting soon on maybe, a related or some other topic. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Aloni Bhatt. Welcome to this special chat, which is part of ET Future of Jobs Summit on the skills and jobs that will shape tomorrow. Martin Parker, Professor of Organization Studies, Bristol University, wrote a piece in The Guardian in 2018. It was titled, "Why We Should Bulldoze the Business School." In it, he wrote, and I quote, "Business schools have huge influence, yet they're also widely regarded to be intellectually fraudulent places, fostering a culture of short-termism and greed." He goes on to say, "Many business school professors, particularly in North America, have argued that their institutions have gone horribly astray. These schools have been corrupted," they say, "by deans following the money, teachers giving the punters what they want, researchers pumping out paint-by-numbers papers for journals that no one reads, and students expecting a qualification in return for their cash, or more likely, their parents' cash. And at the end of it all, most business school graduates won't become high-level managers anyway, just precarious cubicle drones in anonymous office blocks." So it's rather a withering critique of these schools. There's been a lot of debate on the state of business education and the ways it can change, so it's more sensitive to what society needs. And today we have a guest who's perhaps best placed to help us understand how business education can be reimagined to cater to the future of jobs. I'm pleased to welcome Professor R. Prasad, the Director, Academic Wing, ICFAI Group. He's also Director Coordination for online and ODL programs of the ICFAI Foundation of Higher Education. The Institute of Chartered Financial Analysts of India is one of the largest private university groups in the country. Welcome to ET Future of Jobs, Professor Prasad.
Thank you, ma'am. Happy to meet you as well as the audience.
So, Professor Prasad, what are your thoughts on Martin Parker's critique? I mean, he's essentially speaking about the need of overhaul of business education.
I think he's spot on. Let me put it this way. There have been a lot of criticisms about business education starting from the West, particularly from the United States. And there have been leading management thinkers, and by leading, I mean in the top 10 management thinkers who have criticized it. Warren Bennis is one of them. So the fundamental question which is asked is how relevant are business schools? This is the question that Warren Bennis asked. He himself is a professor of organization behavior in a business school. Another famous professor who's asked these questions is Henry Mintzberg from the McGill School. He has also asked similar questions. Now, McGill in the second half of the last decade, he wrote about 3 pieces of literature. And it is shocking to read what he writes. So the first set, these are all empirical evidence gathered by McGill. What he said is that CEOs who are MBAs have done more damage. So the first study, which was done in 2000s, it showed that 14 out of 19 businesses built by CEOs who are Harvard MBAs, they failed. Okay, these are all what I would call, clusters of evidence. We can't generalize with that, but I'm just trying to highlight the point. The second, which was published somewhere in the beginning of the decade, it examined the performance of about 444 organizations where CEOs were celebrated on business magazines covers. They are like heroes, CEOs of, even today that culture continues. What he did was that he measured the decline of these businesses. They performed well, but later they dipped in their performance. So he measured that dip. And he found that this dip was more dramatic for businesses headed by MBAs. Okay, so this is the second. The third study, and this was a far larger study of about 5,000 plus CEOs in major US corporations. And what he found in that is that in order to boost earnings, these CEOs go for short-term strategic experience, precisely what you were mentioning. So if you put all these 3 together, there seems to be a challenge there. We cannot write off what has been mentioned as criticism of these schools. Now, coming back to how it has evolved, there has been literature on this. There have been people who have done research on this. So the first thing that they say is that up till the late 1950s, it was all practice-oriented business schools in the West. And in the late, in the 1950s, immediately after the second Ford, there were a foundation, like Ford Foundation, one of them. So they suggested that there must be theoretical moorings to business.
Right.
And they started funding research. So that culture continued till the late 90s when this question started coming, and it became such a thing that most of the work done was oriented towards research. So the balance between research and practice tilted a lot in favor of research. So what you are saying in terms of what is published is not of much value to society is because the incentive system was driven that way. If you take India too, if you look at how accreditations, assessments, rankings are done, there's quite a bit of marks for research. So what happens? Obviously, institutions will go for it because they want accreditations. So if you put an incentive system like that, then you'll get a lot of publications, perhaps also in those Scopus Index or Web of Science ones. But the quality in terms of how it's going to be useful, it may be academically extremely sound, very rigorous, which is what many of these publications look at. But in terms of practical relevance, absolute relevance, they may not be the case. So the challenge is that this balance has to come back. Now, where does this balance come back from? It has to come back from the faculty. What has happened is that in this debate, the overall issue that the most important issue and the implication of this is employability. Because when research is given focus, a lot of time of teachers goes into research and learning outcomes suffer. Learning outcomes are what produces employability. And so if teachers spend more time on publications and less time on learning out, not that they're not capable of producing learning outcomes, they're very much capable of producing learning outcomes. But then the incentive systems in the best of institutions today are driven that way. So if you want promotions, you want incentives, the incentives are if you produce research. The incentives are not if you get employments, not if you drive up employability. That drives up the brand of the B school, and no doubt society is looking at that because that's what they're trying to do. So there needs to be a balance between research and practice.
Right.
And there is, yes.
In this context, you set up the online MBA program of the ICFAI Foundation of Higher Education, and which also led to the creation of micro-learning content with case methodology for the purpose. So it kind of filled a gap. When you look at B schools or B school education in India right now, what are the gaps you would say that need to be filled? Maybe in curriculum, maybe in delivery, perhaps context, to prepare students with relevant education, say for the next 10, 20 years, that meets also the demand of industry.
Yeah.
Yes. What are the gaps that you see currently in India, in Indian business school education? And how do we go about if those gaps exist? So, the way you did it at your institute, you saw a gap, that there was a gap and we could fill it with online education. So how is it that we go about doing it? What are the gaps and how can we fill them?
So here it is important to look at the macro picture because India is a very large country. India is the largest provider of management education in the world. There are 3,000 plus business schools as per the AICTE website. And as per the last All India Survey for Higher Education, there are about close to 6 lakh MBAs inside the higher education system. The AICTE portal itself reports close to 3 to 4 lakhs. So it's a huge system. Now, if you take the type of institutions and if you take a look at the NIRF rankings, NIRF has ranked only 75 of them, though they would have got a lot more applications. So that itself is very telling.
Yeah.
And if you look at the rank of 75, if you go past 20, the placement rate and the average salary starts dipping. Now that is not actually the challenge. The challenge is India is a very vast country and the needs are very different. So if everyone is taught to be like an IIM or everyone desires to be an IIM, it won't work out. the local B school is expected to take care of local needs. India's needs are very vast, and at all places you need innovation. You don't need innovation only at the high salary levels. You need innovation everywhere.
Right.
So the local business schools, the regional business schools, the national business schools, the global national business schools, all of them need to play different roles. And it is up to the founders and the institution to decide where they are. And I think people are practical enough to know where they stand. So if their vision and their agenda is set based on what they need to do as an institution, call it vision, mission, goals, strategies that they need to set, I think the first place is there. Now that is not incentivized because accreditation body takes a one size fits all role. So you've got a grading, you've got, B, then you've got A, then you've got, A double plus A. So if you take, so you've got that. So what does it mean? That everybody wants to score an A double plus. But if everybody tries to be like an IIM, it won't work. So finally, the outcomes of the institution need to be impactful for the purpose that it is served. So quality as purpose is basically what's your institution's job? What is it meant to do, provided the resources that it has? And if you're able to do that well, then you've got a role to play in society. And I think as society, we also have to accept it. We also should not treat them as different tiers of institutional citizens. The fact is they play a role, they play an important role, they're serving that purpose, and that is where the mass of requirement is. Mass of the requirement is not what comes out of the IIMs. The mass of the requirement is if you go past the 20th institution. So first thing is that. So I think that one size fits all we need to remove from our minds at a common extent. Second is based on what the agenda is, we need innovation at all levels. Now, when we say innovation, basically there are two things. First is, we should be able to identify problems. So whether it is that you're working at a retail store of a large chain, managing a couple of floors, then what is innovation for you? So innovation for you basically is first, what is the problem you face? How are you going to solve it? How are you going to use technology, today's advancements, in order to solve it smartly at less cost and with better customer impact? So if you're able to look at that sort of a problem, and you can do that on a shop floor also, you don't need to look at it as sitting in the HQ of a company. So if you aim to look at it in that fashion, and you aim to look at it at all tiers of institutions as well as students, I think then you come to what you need to do to reach there. And that's where the curriculum, the delivery, the pedagogy, the faculty, the learning environment, the learning process, all that comes in. So if you have got the leadership which understand that this is the job that I need to do, this is the purpose we have, and this is what we need to do in order to fulfill it, I think all these things can be reformed and you can serve a particular purpose and feel happy about it. I think that's the way that we need to look at it.
Right. I was talking to Dr. Sasangan Ramanathan. He's the Dean of Faculty of Engineering at Amrita School of Engineering, Coimbatore. Now, in the course of the conversation, what he told me was that, skills that you need are convergent. So say a financial analyst may need technical skills or may need digital skills. And in many ways, he said that the convergence is already upon us. Now, if you're a business student, sir, in India, from your vantage right now, what are the skills you should be picking up?
I think first that we need to understand what technology is doing to the current jobs. So if you take the case of finance, and you take the case of business schools, in fintech, AI is invading in a huge way. And AI is removing those customer interfaces which are not required, which are routine. That's one example of what AI is doing. But what it is then doing is that it is bringing the problem to the individual, the human being at the next level. So there are choices to be made. There is analysis to be made. And critical problem solving is one of the most important skills that is highlighted even in the future of work reports. So if you take critical problem solving, analysis, then you need to have the capability to do that. This is actually very well captured in a very generic way by Richard Reich. Richard Reich was this labor secretary in 3 governments in the US. The last one was in the Clinton administration. So he used a term, and this term can be used across all professions, including for management. He used the term symbolic analyst. What he meant is that people need to know how to process information and symbols. So if it's a doctor, you've got AI when you're doing an invasive surgery, which tells you what is the pattern which has happened in the past, in what scenarios did which pattern work, and then from there the doctor makes a choice. So the doctor making a choice is a symbolic analyst. The same is the case where I talked about the fintech company. So you've got the AI looking at suppose you got flow-based financing, cash flow-based financing instead of asset-based financing. So you've got this AI which is looking at all the cash flows, which the patterns which are there, and then it tells you these are the scenarios. Now your job is to see what you can do with these scenarios. So automatically critical problem solving is going to be very, very important. The other dimension which is important is self-management, because complexity is going to increase. So when complexity increases, the self is going to have to stay calm. So there are things like flexibility, there are things like adaptability, there are things like mindset, which all go into that single word of self-management. So these two are extremely important and relevant to a lot of professions, including managers.
All right. So what are the industries you believe, will see the most demand and define the jobs of the future?
I think there are two levels. First is at an overall level. There's been a lot of work which has been done by the government of India, a lot of consulting organizations to decide where India can position itself. And so there's one input from them. And the other input is what you need to do with respect to B schools. So I'm going to talk about some of those points which have come in from India's requirement. So what they say is that in order to reap our demographic dividend, which we have till about 2047 or so, we need to produce about 90 million jobs by 2030. That's about 1.2 million, 12 million jobs every annum, while last decade we were producing 4 million. So that's a huge jump. And what they have done is they have identified some kind of industries where we are already doing well, and with some reform, both externally as well as internally within the organization, things can improve. So they've looked at hubs, global hubs. So one is global hubs which serve India and the world. And there are a lot of areas in which this can happen. One is manufacturing. So things like electronics, chemicals, apparel, pharma, medical devices, where some regulation help from the government as well as some supply chain reform that is done, digitization, etc., which is done, things can improve and a lot of exports can take place. Another huge one is IT and digital services in automation, cloud security, mobile, AI, big data, analytics, etc. Likewise, in agriculture, there are certain items for food processing, agriculture, healthcare in terms of medical care-based service exports, a lot of people coming to India. Tourism, high value tourism. So there is one cluster which is there of that nature. Another cluster which has been identified is segments where you can increase the competitiveness using an efficiency machines. So this basically includes things like next generation financial services, digital payments, flow-based lending, new recovery models. So this is another area where the focus of the improvement is on stepping up the efficiency. So fintech is one such area where things change the way there is a business transformation in the way the same thing is delivered. So that is yet another area. The third area they're talking about is the way people are going to live, the new ways of living. And here it's about things like affordable housing, mass transit, and also things like, shared economy kind of things which are there. For instance, online education is shared economy. So a lot of things which are individually going to students now become collective, so the costs come down. And then modern retail. So these are the kind of areas. There are a few more, but these are indicative of the kind of directions into which the jobs will come, and therefore the skills which are required based on the profession that one is pursuing.
Okay. So this is now my last question to you. Recruiters are demanding super specialized industry skills and know-how. With this becoming or going to become more critical, what can B schools do to ensure that their curriculum is aligned with the changing requirement of industry?
I think first thing that we need to do here is that we need to set up systems in the institution, systems and process which will help us to be dynamic and flexible. So for instance, you have a B school, you're running an operation and suddenly, you talk about AI.
Right.
How do you go about doing it? So I think there are a few things that we need to look at. First is institutions must have their alumni associations, because these are the people who go into industry, they like you, they can't change their alumni status, and they are willing to do something for you. So you need, so one is you need to have alumni associations. We can always call them back and find out what's actually taking place, particularly people who have been there for about 3-4 years. They'll tell you a lot about what's happening there in that particular segment. The next is that the interface with industry needs to be built up, and there are a lot of ways of doing this. So faculty need to develop networks with industry, whether it is for panel discussions, or whether it is for internships, or whether it is for consulting at a higher level. I think there are various ways in which this can be done, and that remains as a relationship which you can leverage, because you need to understand that field first, even before you make a foray into it. And then you need to involve them in your statutory bodies like Board of Studies, Academic Council. So they give inputs, whether it comes to the curriculum or something else, they'll give you inputs on this.
Right. Professor Prasad, Director, Academic Wing, ICF-AI Group, thank you very much for your thoughts and for your time today.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a pleasure speaking to you.
Hello and welcome. There is a lot of interest in Web3, the next iteration of the internet powered by blockchain. Now, when you look at companies, there's a growing demand for Web3 talent, not just developers, but lawyers, designers, marketing executives, and so on. But the supply of this talent is very small, partly perhaps due to the lack of quality formal training programs to develop this talent, and maybe the nature of the work of distributed ledger technology. So then, what are the strategies that Web3 employers are employing or using to hire the right talent? I'm Maloni Bhatt, and I have with me Mudita Chauhan, Head of Human Resources for DCX, to talk about the expanding talent market for Web3 and what Web3 means for the future of jobs. Now, prior to this role, Mudita has held senior positions at EduBridge Learning, Reliance Industries, IDFC Bank, and others. She has a degree in computer engineering from NTU Singapore. Mudita, thank you so very much for your time today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Maloni. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
So as someone who's had considerable experience working with financial services organizations and startups that have scaled, what are the major differences that you see when it comes to hiring Web3 talent? What is the recruitment process look like beyond, say, CVs and resumes?
Sure. So typically when we go out to hire the talent that we need, it's very important to understand where exactly can we find the kind of skills that we are looking for. Now, traditionally, it's if you look at skills which have been there in the space for quite some time, it becomes easy because you can quickly go and tap into that talent pool. But for industries such as Web3, which are just taking their shape now, we know that we may not really get ready talent. So it's about beyond the skills that we need today, but it's also about looking for the right kind of attitude and approach so that we can get an idea of where the person has the potential to be able to build the Web3 space. So essentially that's how hiring transforms. Now, over the last few years, the approach in a lot of organizations that even we've been taking is that it's not just about looking at CVs and resumes, because they give you a very limited view of the person's personality and and it's always limited to what they've done in the past, but it doesn't really look at what is the potential that they hold. So we've been actively looking at communities where the prospective talent could be hanging out. And that has essentially become the hunting ground for us, right? So we get, these communities give us a glimpse into what is the kind of work that they are doing, and sometimes also gives us an opportunity to understand how they think and how they innovate. And that's what the hiring managers and the talent acquisition team now needs to focus on. Depending on the kind of skill that we are looking at, there are a lot of communities that are there that we could eventually look at. If you look at designers, it could probably be Behance, it could be Dribble. If you're looking at developers, it could be popular communities such as GitHub. If you specifically look at the Web3 space, there have been a lot of communities that have come up recently. These could be Gitcoin, it could be Radical, it could be Lucia, and that's where even we are looking at. That's one part of the story where as talent acquisition managers, we can go into. But at the same time, we also tend to take a lot of support from our hiring managers because they are the ones who are actually working in this space. So they tend to have their own network where they would be interacting with talent that could be valuable for us. So it's also about collaborating with our hiring managers, tapping into their networks and identifying people who could join us and could be extremely instrumental in the spaces that we are working.
Right. Mudita, you spoke about hiring talent and focused a lot on finding developers, who know how to build Web3 protocols. And then, of course, you also spoke of, getting designers from Behance and stuff like that. But Web3 is also about finding, say, the lawyers, the marketing professionals who have an understanding of Web3, crypto, blockchain. Are we seeing the pool of non-developer crypto literate talent expand? Or is this a challenge for someone in your position?
So Web3 is an entire ecosystem. And just like any space, it will be a combination of a lot of skills that actually will be required to be able to build it further. Like you rightly said, developers, engineers are just one part of it. But essentially, if you look at the Web3 space, it's about the content that is going to be consumed by the end users. And that's where we are already seeing a lot of increase in skill sets and people working in the space of designers, product managers, artists. So it essentially depends on what are the kind of use cases that Web3 is trying to solve for. And it's actually both. It's a push as well as a pull. There is a need that exists, and there is a potential use case that we feel can be solved for. The initial testing has already been done in this space, and that's where skills beyond just developers has been proven to be extremely useful. So yeah, it's going to be an all-round development.
So, if I'm someone who wants to get into the Web3 space, then what are the broad skill sets that you're looking for from people, perhaps who are not crypto, blockchain literate?
Yeah. So I strongly believe that Web3 is basically going to be impacting each and every industry and role. So I think it's also about understanding what is it that you like doing as a person, and then perhaps go on to understanding how that skill can be implemented or can be useful in the Web3 space. If I specifically talk about CoinDCX or companies such as us, the skill that is extremely important in the near future are the right set of engineering skills, the developers who will be required to build this space, the product managers. It will also be the cybersecurity professionals. But beyond that, since the focus is on the kind of content being consumed by the end user, it is going to expand to areas such as designers, artists. It could also be about working in different spaces such as the AR and VR realities. So people who are good at creating that kind of experience for the end consumer. So a whole sort of skill sets are going to be coming up. I see a lot of use cases for it in the HR space on how we can present that kind of product offering or experience offering to our employees. So it's about extending your current area of skill set and then looking at how it can be implemented in the Web3 ecosystem. And I believe the possibilities are infinite there.
All right. What are the challenges that you and your hiring managers are facing when it comes to finding this kind of talent? Because you're solving for the next 5-10 years, right? The talent may be behind the curve right now, and there is a lack of very good quality formal training programs. Maybe some exist, but they're very few and far in between. How does that pan out for you?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the potential talent, and that's the role that the talent acquisition managers or hiring managers need to play today, to be able to identify the right person or the right attitude or approach that will make these people successful in the Web3 space. So you're absolutely right. The technical skills may not exist today, and it's a very, very new space. So people may not have had the opportunity to hone their skills. But given the speed at which this space is moving and the innovation is happening, it's very important that the person has that innovation streak to be able to look beyond the existing problem statements. And in a lot of cases, also innovate new problem statements, because I mean, the space is so new. What we see today is probably just 2% of the kind of use cases that the Web3 space will be solving for. We've just barely scratched the surface of it. So it's about identifying those use cases and problem statements and putting your mind to it, and then also taking end-to-end ownership. For somebody who is good at learning, has learning agility, is able to pick up new skills, is a self-starter, is able to innovate, that's the kind of attitude that we look for. And then it's not that it's emerged all of a sudden, right? There's also a little bit of an overlap with the Web2 space and what the world has been seeing so far. So if somebody has the basics in the overlapping skills and then has the right attitude, I think that's going to be a perfect combination, even if you don't have a formal training in what we are building.
People who are coming into this space, do you see them as people who are working, who like the gig kind of jobs? They would want remote work or the ability to work from anywhere?
I think to a large extent, that's also a very personal choice that the individual makes. We speak to a lot of candidates, and a lot of them express the need to be able to now come back to office, maybe not on a regular basis, right? I think we are beyond a time where we can expect people to come to office every day, and I think it's not even required. That amount of flexibility has to be there, and that's perfectly okay. Now, essentially, how the organization implements it depends on what's the stage of growth they are at. For young companies where you're just innovating, you're building new ideas, a lot of collaboration will help. So it's about finding that perfect balance on how the individual likes to work, and what is the requirement, what's the space that the organization is providing, and finding that balance and right mixture so that it works for both. Honestly, I feel over the last 2 years, I think we are beyond a point where we say that remote working does not work. Remote working definitely works. It is. You can get a lot of work done, especially for us. We became a unicorn during the entire remote working, and then we also doubled our valuation in the last 1 year. So productivity has not been a concern. Collaboration has not been a concern. I think there's a lot of value that comes out in ideation, innovation, and thinking of new ideas as a result of working together. But essentially in the Web3 space, where you're looking at a lot of decentralized content being created, remote working can give us the opportunity to just look beyond geographical boundaries and not always mandate physical presence, but just let the right set of ideas come together. And there are lots of tech platforms that are now available to be able to enable that.
Right. Mudita, this is definitely good to hear for a lot of people who might be wanting to get into the space. My last question to you is the basic structure of the organization undergoing changes when it comes to Web3?
I think even without Web3, there is a need for the structure of organizations to evolve. What has worked really well for us is that we have been working in a decentralized format. I think it gives a lot of opportunity for people to look beyond hierarchies and positions and always going through certain channels, but focusing on, if I'm the expert in this and I'm able to give an idea, does that get accepted? And do I get, does the organization trust me to be able to lead it end to end? I think that's what organizations need to adapt to, irrespective of Web3 or not, because that is the need of the day-to-day. That's also how the talent works today. They need their own space and time, and to be able to have a smooth flowing communication going around across the organization. So yeah, so that has worked really well for us. And I think a lot of organizations will be adapting to that as well, especially with the younger talent coming in and the way they like to work. And just one last point on, what is it that we are looking at? You would have also heard about CoinDCX now launching CoinDCX Ventures, where we're also looking at collaborating with other organizations and crypto projects and younger organizations who are working in this space. So it's also about beyond looking your own organization and building an ecosystem of other talent pools or other organizations who can partner very closely with you to deliver the same set of objectives that you plan for yourself.
So Mudita, Web3 startups are dominated by the younger generations. You're basically saying that is triggering shift in culture and in the way talent is now hired.
a part of it is right, but at the same time, I think even the older generation, they've also understood the merit in doing that, because decisions get taken faster, you get more opinions, and it's about respecting the expertise of the individual rather than getting stuck in traditional organization structures of looking at designations and roles. It's about valuing what you bring to the table. The focus is on talent rather than what is the position that I hold in the organization.
All right, and on that note, Mudita Chauhan, thank you so very much for joining us and for your thoughts on this subject.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here and really loved the conversation I had.
Hi, we are CoinDCX. We are not just a great place for crypto enthusiasts. We are also a great place to work. And how did we make it all happen? Everyone's the boss, the leader, the manager of their own work.
We are building a team of extremely smart and passionate individuals who are excited about building the future of finance.
We have built an excellent product, and the team is making it better every day.
We made this happen. And this? This is Team CoinDCX signing off.
Thank you so much for joining us today. In this discussion, we are talking about the future of technology jobs. And the most important part of it is what we are going through now, which is what does this mean in terms of change in the skilling process? Thankfully, we have with us 3 people who have been living this journey. So welcome to this, Dr. Paul, Mr. Ayur Kaul, and Professor Rudra Pratap, who represent Talent Sprint, Skillshare, and Klaksha University. And each of them have been in different ways preparing students and professionals for skilling for new technology jobs. So it's going to be very interesting learning from them. So welcome again to all 3 of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll start with you, Dr. Paul. So, when we have spoken about this topic, and you've given a very clear framework where you talked about 3 kinds of possible collaboration between machines and algorithms and humans in the future. So if I remember correctly, you talked about algorithm creators, who are the ones who will build algorithms of the future on which the workload might be running. You spoke about algorithm collaborators, which is an interesting and emerging segment where this could be across domains. More people might be working with the algos and the machines. And then you talked about algorithm workers who might be working by the algorithm. So if you could just take that framework, Dr. Paul, and paint us a picture of how you imagine that world with a few examples.
Sure. Thank you so much, Devlina. It's great to be here with esteemed colleagues. Lovely to meet all of you. Yeah, I think Devlina was referring back to a conversation that we had some time ago where, in an attempt to discover and predict the future of the workforce, in the light of machine learning and AI being a dominant theme, the question was that what happens to the workforce in the future? And the realization we came to was that there are going to be people who are going to be highly valued, the top of the so-called professional food chain, who are going to be the people who are writing the algorithms of the future. So if you are, for example, somebody who writes the app for the next Uber and the algorithm for the next Uber, clearly that's a very aspirational category, an entrepreneur, perhaps somebody who can go out and conquer the world in terms of a new technology breakthrough or a disruption. So clearly at the apex of the pyramid, we have potentially the algorithm writers, people who create the next generation of great product services using technology. And this doesn't have to be purely tech alone. It can be in any industry, whether it's in manufacturing, it can be in aviation, it can be in healthcare. In every area, because of digital disruptions, it's possible to be a great algorithm creator. And we believe that such people are going to be at the top of the food chain. So for example, I gave the example of Uber, but imagine if you are the person who invents the mechanism for the smart factory of the future, where all automation that happens in a factory leads to an extremely efficient model of manufacturing, which is far more productive. Or you know how to create a nuclear power plant, which does not require humans, can be run by algorithms. So therefore, creators of algorithms are of great value. The question then comes, what happens? Because algorithm creators cannot be more than perhaps 1% of the workforce. The majority cannot be at the top of the pyramid by definition of the structure of the pyramid itself. So what happens at the next level? So perhaps another 10, 20, 30% of the workforce of the future can be extremely skilled professionals. In fact, the word professional itself gives an indication of this, because historically, people who are professionals can be lawyers, engineers, doctors, accountants, etc. And we call them the professions for a reason, because they have a established practice and process of getting things done in sophisticated areas where knowledge work is important. So imagine, for example, in this world of algorithm collaborators, the commander of a flight who flies an extremely sophisticated commercial airliner, so perhaps somebody who flies the next Airbus 380 or beyond, is essentially somebody who's highly skilled in using the machines, because the machines will fly themselves largely 95 to 98% of the time. The aircraft flies itself. But you need a very sophisticated supervisor who essentially works with that machine to make sure all is going well and steps in if there are exceptions, or steps in if there is a requirement to change things. Or imagine a robotic surgeon who is going to use a robotic platform like Da Vinci to conduct a very sophisticated, extremely efficient surgical operation, which leads to practically no blood loss and no morbidity, and people go back to work the next day, etc. So another example of a medical professional who can be an algorithm collaborator, and so on and so on. I can give you many, many examples where humans are working tightly with machines to create a very high quality outcome where both the machine and the human are in a very friendly, symbiotic loop, which is creating a great outcome, right? So that's the next level of professionals who also will be very successful, wealthy in the future as well. The category that's remaining after that, perhaps 60-70% of the workforce, which is of course a great worry to all of us, is because the world's population is increasing, and these are people who we see them today delivering food for Zomato, or delivering your package from Amazon, or driving a Uber car. These are examples of people who are working for the algorithm. Essentially, they take the algorithm as their boss. They are perhaps part of the gig economy, and they go out there and essentially carry out instruction of the algorithm with very little, if any, leeway in terms of how they can exercise their own autonomy. There's hardly any. They have to follow the algorithm to the last letter. So those are three, think of it that as a three-level framework of algorithm creators, collaborators, and those who work for the algorithm as the workforce of the future.
Right. No, thank you so much, Dr. Paul. And in fact, in our report, we have explained this in detail with the philosophy and the framework which Dr. Paul has mentioned right now. Let me turn to you now, Professor Pratap. And we were discussing the curriculum which you have developed in Plaksha. And the reason, behind that being that you feel that the traditional curriculum when you're teaching engineering or software misses out some key real world components. And two of the components which you have in your curriculum, I felt were really interesting. And I wanted you to kind of, discuss that a little bit with this group and the people listening. These two are self-leadership and design. So if you can share, Professor Pratap, what difference is this making? And connecting back to what Dr. Pal mentioned, is this helping more people move towards becoming collaborators, if not creators?
Absolutely. Thank you, Deblina, for having me here. And in the distinguished panel of panelists like Santanu and Ayur. Yes, we do have these distinctive features, and these features have come after a lot of deliberations with educationists all across the world. This is not something that we only dreamt of, but education per se is also going through a huge churn. That what should the future universities look like, or what should the future of education be like? So in that context, it always comes up that what we think of engineers, are we really creating complete engineers in a sense, if you will? So what does complete engineers mean? And if you listen to industry has certain viewpoint that engineers must also have communication skills. They must also know how to work in teams. What fresh graduates look like is that they have certain skill set, and that's about it. It's a technical skill set. They know certain things, how to write programs or whatever. But when you think about engineers of tomorrow, you are looking at people who will look at society as, society is their clientele, right? They're solving problems of society, who understand society. So through design curriculum, we bring that aspect in. In design, it's not about just functional design. Functional design, all engineers know, how to make something do what function it is supposed to do. That's not it. Today's design space is much bigger. There is sustainability, which is at the core of it. What does sustainability of a particular design mean? Where are these whatever it is that you are creating, where is it going to go at the end? How much energy is being used for this? Is that something that we can afford as a society for creating billions of pieces of such a thing? So, there are different angles of design. It's not merely functional design, or even for that matter, ergonomic design, which has been around for a while also. But looking at design from social perspective, looking at design from this planet Earth sustainability perspective. So those elements today are very, very vital. And self and leadership is for discovering that, hey, you are not a peg in this whole chain. You are a thinking human being. You got to question things, and you got to be able to lead a team of people who are coming with sort of conflicting requirements to a design. How do you lead that team to converge on something which is at the end really good for the company you work for and the planet that you work for? These are very, very broad sort of parameters on which you want to train them, right? That how do you identify these things? How do you work towards this? Self and leadership. So self-discovery is also part of this whole journey. There was a generation, in my generation, there was no self-discovery. You got the branch you got, you took the job that came along, and it was not necessarily driven by the passion you had. But today we have that luxury. You just heard, lots of things we can, relegate to AI. Let AI do this. Let machine learning do lots of chores. But you want to discover what is your passion, what drives you. And that is not automatic as we think. There are methods to do this. There are systematic ways of engaging students into this craft. And that's what we are trying to do. So apart from skills in algorithmic thinking or computational thinking or discovering new algorithms, apart from all of that, teaching them ML, AI, all those techniques which are technical, this part is very, very vital for producing technical leaders of tomorrow, which is what our mandate is at Plaksha.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you, Professor Pratap. And I'll come to you now, Mr. Kaul. And, Shantanu, Paul gave us a framework, a 3-step framework, if you can call it. Dr. Pratap and Professor Pratap mentioned, different aspects of skills which should come under an engineering curriculum to really prepare, wholesome engineering professionals. And when you come to Skillshare, apart from technology and business, you actually have courses on creative skills and also lifestyle, right? Which could include culinary, crafts, etc. So do you see a very different profile of learners across these categories? Or do you see a connected thread, like people are choosing to self-learn even across these categories, including technology and business skills?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Deblina, first of all, for having me here. And it's great to be, sharing a screen with the esteemed people like Dr. Shantanu and Mr. Rudra Pratap. To your question, we believe that Skillshare is, for someone who's creative and curious, and that spreads across whether he has a tech background or doesn't have a tech background, whether they are looking for something in tech, business, or like just for lifelong life learning skills. So what we see is that a same person can be a data scientist or a decision scientist in a day, or like a full stack developer, but still have a flair for writing, photography, learning culinary skills, or learning something on the lines of illustration and design, because that's something that moves that person. What I mean to say is that millennials and Gen Z, they're going to have varied interest areas. They don't shy away from taking risk. Their attention span is less, so they want to try different things. They don't want to. They live in the fear of missing out. So it's not either this or that. It is this and that. So to your question, I would say that we do not see like a clear like a pattern between people who are taking tech classes and productivity classes and someone who's completely different who's taking say a culinary class. But it's the same set of people. Once the core pillar for us is that you have to have that curiosity and creativity in your DNA, and if that is there, then the domain doesn't matter.
Right. No, thank you so much. In a way, we are saying that by doing this, polymath skills are being, kind of encouraged among professionals, even engineering graduates, and more people could then probably look at their skills a little broadly than A or B, right? It's a combination of A plus B is what you're saying, and that might, kind of help them become better problem solvers. So, Dr. Paul, coming back to you, I think one thing which you had mentioned to me when we had spoken, regarding the report as well was that, you look at the curriculum as something which really helps people become problem solvers, right? That's the number one goal. And how do you therefore do that through different kind of computational problem solving methods during the curriculum? So in your journey as well, through Talent Sprint and now with NSE, initially you were focusing on data science and technology, and now there is focus of a combination of that along with financial services. So is this again, a turn towards the more computational domain-specific problem-solving skills, which the world would need, and therefore, professionals training for that world of future tech jobs would need? Or is there any other way to decode this?
Well, I guess there's multiple questions packed into that, but let me just start by addressing your, I think, initial point that the whole purpose of learning and advanced learning, the kind that we're talking about, and of course, I completely also agree with everything Ayush said, apart from what Dr. Pratap said, that problem solving is the heart of essentially good education, right? I mean, end of the day, if you don't exit as problem solvers, then I don't know what the purpose of learning is, right? You should be able to marshal all the skills and talents we learn and that we have God-gifted, plus what we learn from our teachers and environments, to put it to good practice and problem solving. So I think, to me, the whole essential idea here is that, I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is that the nature of education, and I think Dr. Pratap mentioned this quite well, and I just want to add to that little bit to say that, the whole purpose of education is to essentially treat students in college as emerging professionals, not to treat them as students, but treat them as emerging professionals from the very first moment they join college. Which means that, in a professional world, for example, we expect professionals to self-learn. We don't expect them to be given, 10 lectures a week or 5 lectures a day. We want them to be self-learners, self-motivated learners who can go out and they have the tools to acquire learning that they need on demand, right? That's an important skill. The other skill, which you also mentioned, was this idea of working in teams. I think peer learning is a great aspect of learning. I mean, look back to our own college days. How much do you remember the professors? How much do you remember our friends, our classmates? And how much do we learn from our classmates? Perhaps as much, if not more, than we learn from specific professors. So peer learning, right? And third, and I want to quote one of my friends who's a professor at Berkeley, who says that the project is the new interview, right? If somebody has actually done something real that is interesting, sophisticated, and done that as part of their curriculum, I think they're going to essentially, that project is the ultimate showcase of your skills. And any interviewer today worth their salt will give higher value to your project that you've done that is of substance than to anything that you can say about exams you've taken or grades you've got, right? So in that sense, the democratization is happening. And I think what I like about the direction that education is taking now, and I think Lakshya is a great example of such an institution, is that we need to kind of create people who are, what I call intellectual athletes, right? They have to be able to go out there and perform. And to perform, the rules of the game will emerge. They don't know when they leave college what is the nature of that sport, intellectual sport they will be asked to be part of. So we are trying to build intellectual athletes who have the skill sets of self-learning, peer learning, experiential learning by making things, by building things, by creating things. So all that put together, I think, is the direction of all of this. And to your final question, yes, why are we adding entire financial services curriculum? Because I think financial services, like any other industry, perhaps more than other industries, the most tech disrupted industry in the world. So wherever tech goes, financial services are the first to pick it up and put it into practice. So therefore, convergence of tech and financial services is one reason why we are here. And the other thing, of course, we didn't talk about this, but if you look at the Web 3.0, we talk about Metaverse. I think you see financial technology, apart from AI, and AR, VR, all three pillars of Metaverse are all very interesting stuff of the future.
Yes, I think we will cover that as part of this entire webinar, which we are doing at ET. But thank you so much for bringing that out, Dr. Paul. And in fact, I think, as you mentioned, in the interest of building intellectual athletes, and if the project is really the interview and the learning, so the question to you then, Professor Pratap, is where exactly is the role of the university? There are different ways to learn right now. A bright student, a self-learner, a lifelong learner can find so many different ways in which they can accumulate their learning. And the new education policy is also, providing more flexible pathways right now. So in this sense, the university is also kind of going through its own learning process. The corporates are also coming up with boot camps. There are boot camp specific courses on technologies as well. So how do you think the universities are reinventing themselves, especially universities like yours, which are, new age universities? How are you kind of upskilling yourself for this change?
Yes, that's right. That universities have to learn too. And what this new challenge has done is it has shaken universities quite a bit. Universities as they exist today, the older universities, they are founded on principles which are so old, right? We all know that. It's unbelievable. And it's very hard to make radical changes in such large systems. So that's why, universities like Praksha are coming along because of this reason, that there is a void here. So the first thing a university has to do is be very, very nimble by design. You have to keep reinventing, and you have to put this in your design itself, that you can't have these departments that have existed forever and you can't close them. Doesn't matter what you try to do. No, departments should not exist, period, right? But there is this huge urge of belonging that people want, and that's why departments exist. You want that sense of membership to something. So how do you provide a new model for that? That a university has to think of. I love the this phrase that Santanu used, intellectual athletes. So, and I like the idea that it's athletes. It's not one kind. It's not a runner. You could be training a sprinter. You could be also training a marathon runner. And you need both. You need all those guys in intellectual space too. So providing a university structure in which all of this is possible, which means that you are paying individual attention, individual training to students. Now that doesn't happen in the kind of structure that exists right now in universities. But you can do that today. The problem is with scaling. If I have to only teach 10 students or 100 students, I can do that. Individual faculty members can pay individual attention. How do you scale? That's where these new age technologies like AI can help tremendously. So that these are the things that you are looking at, bringing new age technologies into education and keeping it live wire, that it is continuously changing. It's not like I set a syllabus today and that syllabus is going to now last for 10 years. Tough luck. It should change every semester. The third thing is that you have to make self-learners. Now, we are in a very dangerous territory today, that everybody thinks that they can be self-learners because, there is WhatsApp University, there is Facebook University, there are, all these sources of information. But, you know it very well from personal experience and from experience of your friends. This information download, or, the avalanche rather of information, what does it do to us? Okay. You don't have that ability to sieve information correctly and get the right information. That's not a trivial task. So universities will be looking at imparting this kind of skill more and more. How do you get all this information which is floating around, sieve it through something, or create your own sieve so that what you get is actually a curated information that you can use effectively. This is going to be a part of university training. And also this fact that you are going to teach students how to learn something quickly on your own, right? also create like half a credit course, 1 credit course, which should be for lifelong learning. Today Deblina wants to come and wants to know a part of AI. Plaksha should be able to handle that. Okay, you are coming with whatever background you are coming with. Here you go. This is the 1 credit course, and at the end of it, whatever you wanted to know about AI, or for quantum computing, or whatever new technologies that come up. There is a need for such kind of education as well, right? So universities have to completely reinvent themselves, not a little bit. It's not about incremental changes anymore. Faculty have to be very, very different today. So I think that the challenge for universities is multifold. And everybody working in the university system, all professors, thinking professors, they all know this fact, that this is what we are up against. The better, the faster we shape up, the better off we are.
Right. In fact, in this world of changed environment, you never really graduate from a university, right? It should be like a lifelong membership if you really have lifelong learning.
Absolutely.
So let me take that thought and come to you, Mr. Kaul. So lifelong learning, and in a way you enable that through Skillshare, but it's a very difficult concept, right? I mean, most people naturally find it very tough to learn, and to learn for an exam, to learn for a job itself is so hard. And then you're saying learn for life. It's so tough. So when you are enabling this through Skillshare, through your combination of courses, what do you think helps people to make that first call to action? Like, today I will learn this. If you can share, some examples on that. And the second side is, you have creators and you call them real world creators who have actually solved this and, kind of been through that journey. So give us a little bit of understanding of the creator world as well, as you call them.
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's obviously a lot of drive required for someone to keep continuously learning for the whole life. What I personally believe is, like, there are 2 kinds of people. One, a small bucket who are very clear in their head early on that this is what they want to do, and they are either privileged or they have the resources, and they do that with all the support from their friends, family, the entire ecosystem, and they achieve what they really set themselves out to. But most of us are the ones who, as Dr. Shantanu also said, that they come into the system, they start absorbing things around them, and then eventually they decide, okay, this is what I like, this is the aspect of a certain subject that I like, and I want to go one level deeper in this. And this is how most of us find our niches in the way when we grow up. And what is happening, the delta for this was, like, people used to, in a generation previous to me, they used to find it when they are 35, 40. In my generation, they are at 28, 30. But now with the Gen Z, they are very clear with rapid experimentation and with things what they like at very early age of around 18 to 21. When they are in college, they're like, okay, yes, this is what I really want to do. This is what moves my needle, and this is what I want to spend more time on. And that can also keep changing. It's not that they're committing to like, as you see, 20 years back, someone who used to join a company will be there for like next 30 years of life, will retire, get a nice favor in the same company for spending so much time. Today, people are like, okay, I tried this, did this for 3 years. Maybe now it's time for me to try something new. They like new challenges, and they want to, explore different subjects for that matter. So it is difficult for a company like us to, how do you tap into these people how do we know what is that they are currently learning? So that's why the one of the biggest product bets that we have taken is that we do not sell a particular class or a course. What we say is that there is a Skillshare subscription that you come for, and then you get access to 40,000 classes. And you can, over a period of time, because you have an yearly subscription, you go through all these classes, whatever you like. So today, maybe it's photography that has got you here. You saw some ad on Facebook or Google, and you thought that you want to learn photography at that point. So you enrolled on Skillshare, but eventually you thought, okay, that's okay, but I want to learn design also. So then you see from the recommendations that you get based on your interests, based on the amount of time you're spending on the platform, we recommend, or based on the geography of teachers that you are learning from, there are special recommendations that come to you. Okay, so you have liked illustration, so maybe the next topic that you want to learn is animation. So there is science behind that, and that's how we keep nudging our users to keep on learning, because again, it goes back to the first principles, thinking that we want people who are creative and curious in nature. So who someone is like that, once you start feeding them the right kind of content, their creative juices started flowing, they get more excited, they want to learn more and more, and it becomes like a natural process rather than a force where you see a lot of companies today trying to run ads and having telecallers, trying to push their product. But we don't do that. So it's more about, you come here for learning, you come here because you're inspired by something, and then it's our job to make, to keep delivering that content from those kind of creators that you will love, and you'll continue that the drive in you or the passion in you that got you here will not die down.
Understand. So in a way also, I think as I'm listening to all three of you, the other thought which is coming to my mind is the teacher was always the central point for education to really help the students. And in the way in which we are looking at it right now, like Dr. Paul mentioned, thinking of this different pedagogy styles and different ways of computational problem solving, or as you mentioned, Mr. Kaul, different levels of creators, or as you mentioned, Professor Pratap, that having this kind of university change itself, where professors are constantly nimble and thinking of what's coming next. And the role of the teacher, and in fact, the best thing is the regulations are also opening up in that respect, and the new policy is allowing for more collaborations, between traditional universities and between organizations which actually have excellent real life pedagogy and curriculums. So let me ask you, this is a common question, and I want to ask each of you this question. So this time I'll start with you, Mr. Kaul, and then Professor Pratap, and then finally Dr. Paul. So the question is, imagine we are crystal gazing to 2030. So we're crystal gazing to 2030. And if you think of your platform or your university or your courses, what do you think will be the top courses your students will be going through? Who would be your learners? And what kind of jobs or work would they be doing?
That's a good question. And though if I see from 10 years from now, any course that has innovation and creating from 0 to 1 as a core would be something that people would love to learn. By that, what I mean is that there are traditional courses where then there are people are learning from a long time, because that is what the demand is out in the market. But with time, we are seeing that it is what was relevant yesterday is not that relevant today and will be irrelevant tomorrow. So I believe that in 2030 there will be very few things that might be irrelevant from today's catalog. There will be like classes like soft skills or presentation skills that might still continue, because that is more of a personality trait rather than a subject. But anything that revolves around creating, whether it's in terms of machines, whether it's in terms of creating algorithms or softwares, that is something like, I don't want to pinpoint one subject, but like anything that is 0 to 1, that would be very relevant in 2030. How are we prepared for that? Obviously, we keep talking to our users quite often. We try to understand their learning patterns. We try to see that what is the trend going on, what are the things that they are continuously liking, what are the things that they are not liking. So with accumulating that user data, the user preference data and engagement data, we would be in a position to churn out more and more classes which are in line with what the learner in 2030 wants to learn.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Kaul. Professor Pratap, I think same question for you, for Plaksha.
Sure. This is a great question. And Develina, I wish you would record this and play it 10 years later, again on the same platform. This is what all of you gentlemen said.
We'll hold you to it and you back. Yeah.
Yes, that would be wonderful. So anyway, I think that, as I said, that the university system is going through a huge change, and it will be very different university in 2030. Right now, our clientele, if you wish to call that, is usually from 18 years to about 28, 30 years, PhDs and postdocs. That is going to change from, my guess is that is going to change from 18 to 80. That's going to be the clientele. We are going to have people enrolling in all kinds of courses at later ages as well, and upskilling themselves, getting trained in new skills, continuously changing job scenarios will require that, and universities have to be there to assist that. That will be one. There will be a lot of churn in the way knowledge is created as well. So the kind of researchers that we have today, I think we will have far more researchers from all walks of life coming in and going out. So the flux, I expect the flux rate through the university to be much higher, okay, at all levels, okay, for researchers as well. There will be, faculty members who will be working here for a few years, coming up with a great idea, and then running out as entrepreneurs and establishing a company and running with that, right? So then new people will come in. This kind of churn is going to happen. So the university, as we know today, is going to change quite a bit. And obviously the courses too. The tectonic shift is already happening. What used to be in engineering as foundational courses, that is changing rapidly. We have now a digital base, so to speak. Foundations are digital foundations. But there are principles of invariance also, that there are some things which you cannot do away with. The physical laws that hold the world together, you will still need training in those, you will still need grounding in those, and those will persist.
Understand. And thank you so much, Professor Pratap. And coming to you, Dr. Paul.
Sure. I was just reminded of this famous sentence by an economist who said that prediction is a dangerous business, especially about the future. Right? So therefore, I'm going to go out on a limb with my fellow colleagues here and take a stab at it. So let me not talk about specific subjects and topics, because I think those often have the flavor of the quarter, flavor of the year, flavor of the next few years flavor to them. So I'm going to avoid topic-specific conversation, but let's talk about secular trends, right? With secular trends, if you bank on those, I think three clear signs. One is that computational thinking and computational problem solving in any shape or form is only going to increase. And this is going to be like, it's going to be language A or language B is not important, right? It is going to be this tool or that tool is not important. What's important is that more and more people coming into their adulthood or their, sort of workforce are going to need computational thinking, because digital disruption is sweeping every industry. So if you have to work in the workforce of the future 10 years from now, computational problem solving is inevitable. That's one clear area which I think will thrive. Second area which I believe will thrive, which connects to the point about design earlier made by Professor Pratap, is that human-computer interaction therefore becomes very important, because in a world where technology dominates and we live and breathe with technology on a daily basis at work and at home, clearly human-computer interaction and design that pertains to that, are you going to be an expert in the future on digital design? How to handle hardware, software, technology, and how do you create a human experience around it? I think that should be another area which should just go hand in hand with this kind of a growth. I think that kind of HCI, user experience in design, I think will be very big. And the third part, which I think is the silent, the elephant in the room that we all know and also referred to earlier by Professor Pratap, is climate science. I mean, climate change is going to create this complete disruption between now and the next 10 years. Entire industries will be created to solve it, and entire workforce have to be generated to solve it. So I suppose that is going to be an area where learning will be very important, because that's really pretty much a cold start kind of an industry. We don't have a whole lot today, except perhaps electric vehicles now are becoming mainstream. But the entire knowledge around climate science and climate change, sustainability, planetary sustenance, all of that, I think will be the third big trend in terms of learning.
Great. No, thank you so much, each one of you, for giving us the time. I think this is going to be very valuable for our listeners. And just to sum up, we talked about a framework for the future of technology of jobs, algorithm creators, algorithm collaborators, algorithm builders. We talked about different ways in which this could be created through a new age university system, as Professor Pratap mentioned, which could be, through bringing in self-leadership, bringing in design, bringing in sustainability as areas to think through. It could be through, more focus on lifelong learning and connected courses, as Mr. Call mentioned. And overall and overarching, I think the idea would be that how could people keep thinking through computational problem solving as we move towards the future? And can that move, as Professor Pratap mentioned, not from 18 to 30, but from 18 to 80, right? And how can we keep kind of building on that? So thank you so much, each one of you, for joining us today. And that's it from all of us at ET.
Hello and welcome to economictimes.com. I'm your host, Pallavi. ET Future of Jobs Summit aims to bring together business leaders, policymakers, innovators, and thought leaders to discuss the skills and jobs that will shape tomorrow. Through this initiative, our eminent speakers and industry experts will share their insights on the changing job landscape. For today's freewheeling conversation, we have with us Mr. Ved Mani Tiwari, COO, NSDC. Mr. Tiwari has over 30 years of professional experience where he served the government of India and worked with private sector in infrastructure, including energy, urban development, and transportation, to name a few. Mr. Ved Mani Tiwari serves as the Chief Operating Officer at National Skill Development Corporation, NSDC, and is responsible for managing the organization's operations. Welcome to economictimes.com.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, for inviting me and sharing my thoughts.
So let us now begin. My first question to you would be that as part of the vision and the mission of NSDC, narrowing the existing gap between the demand and supply of skills, what do you see as the main challenge or challenges that emerge in trying to narrow this gap?
So what we have observed over the last 1 year that there have been some rapid changes in the skill and the work ecosystem. What we are observing is that a lot of technologies, new technologies that are coming up, they are reshaping the entire man-machine interaction. When industrialization happened, the muscle job was taken over by machines. Now in the AI/ML world, a lot of cognitive work is being taken over by the machines. So this realization that workplace is changing dramatically because of the advent of the technology is one challenge that we are facing. The other thing that has happened is that geostrategic issues are shaping the supply chains of the world. And because of this realigned supply chains, the value chain itself is changing. And the new value chain requires new skills. So that's another area that is emerging. And the pandemic has also induced a lot of work behavior changes because of the frequent shutdowns that the businesses are observing. So these three changes that oncoming new technologies, new geopolitical realities impacting supply chains, and pandemic-induced work behavior changes warrant a responsive education and skilling system. So that is the area of challenge that we are focusing right now.
In fact, if you look ahead, if you look for the future, in your opinion, how does year 2030 look to you? I mean, what will be the skills that will be required in the next 8 years or so?
So as I just now discussed that the technology is changing a lot of things. Mm-hmm. What happens is that whenever there is a technological shift, there is a lot of need shifts also happen.
Right.
So human needs in 2030 are going to be different from what they are today. From subsistence to physical level fulfillment, we will have more care and emotional needs in 2030. And that is one area where I believe that the nature of jobs will change a lot. A lot of focus will move towards the emotional and the softer aspects of the human needs. And we have always, if we go through the history of the agrarian economy first and then the industrial economy, we will find that whenever big shift in the production methods have happened. It has called for completely new paradigm in the society and all the spheres of human. So that is where the man-machine interface, both at the automation level and also at the cognitive level, is the new area that we will be seeing.
Sure. In fact, the changes that you just mentioned, besides the technological changes, the emotional needs, and also the behavioral changes need to be taken into consideration. But also from you, we want to understand what percentage of graduates as of now or at this point in time do you think are employable? Is there a dissonance? Is there a gap between the talent emerging from universities and the skill set that organizations demand and the skill sets which are already there? So how do you look at this, and what is the industry feedback on this so far?
By nature, the education ecosystem is not a very dynamic in nature, whereas the world of work is very dynamic. So what has happened is that over the last 2.5 decades, the world of work has changed at a very rapid pace, and world of education is trying to respond to it, but there's a lag. And that lag calls for and bring more and more from the work to the real work education.
Right.
That is where I think we now have enabling framework. Our regulatory system is responding to that through Academic Bank of Credit and other regulatory changes that are happening at a rapid pace. We have seen all in last few months. So I'm very confident that India will take lead in this, and our young graduates will become part of the global value creation.
In fact, talking about the national education policy, there has been a lot of focus on digital learning. So we want to understand from you, to what degree is there a need to reskill? You said they won't be called as unemployable, but yes, of course, there's a scope for a need to upskill or reskill the existing talent. So is this something that needs to be done urgently and on a mass scale? And if so, then what are the new emerging models of learning in your opinion?
Recently, post-pandemic, the automobile world became a real example of how semiconductors have penetrated almost every sphere of our life. The automobile production all over the world suffered because of the chips not being available. And I was talking to a few business leaders in the automobile world. It was really, people realized only when they saw that supply chain bottleneck, that every single component that is going into an automobile today is having a dedicated chip or is a configurable thing. So much so that the mechanical technician who is doing work on brake assembly or engine, etc., they never realized that over just last 2 decades, the digital has entered into every sphere of our production ecosystem. So that is one area where I feel that the conventional world of manufacturing is changing. And the way products are being designed and delivered is changing dramatically. So the reskilling, upskilling is a need of our, not only for the young graduates, but is also a big need for working professionals. Because everybody talks about digital, that how digital is changing the businesses. But if you look at how semiconductor is changing the business, that itself is a massive change that is happening, that every single component of manufactured component will have a chip integrated into it. Every single interface of services will have a code integrated into it. So this combination of chips and codes are the new world, and that will drive the reskilling, upskilling for the future.
In fact, if we go by a recent report by NASSCOM, it says that the demand and supply gap for digital tech talent is going to multiply more than 3 times by 2026. So what would this widening gap mean for the tech industry, especially in the Indian context? How will leadership and organizations have to adapt at a structural level? I mean, how do you look at this?
one good thing is that tech world has always risen to the challenge of skilling, reskilling, upskilling. We have seen that whenever the technology has changed, the working professionals have quickly adapted to new technology. So a lot of this gap would be filled, as I told you, that now every single area of work today is either getting a chip embedded or getting a code embedded. So that is an opportunity that none of us are looking at today. And that calls for that if we, instead of just looking at the new emerging technologies and how new people will enter into the world of work, if we start focusing on the large number of working professionals who are still below in the age range of 30 to 35, because they will be serving the humanity for next 2.5 decades. Looking at that pool and making that pool technically and digitally upskilled is what I would like to focus. And if we focus on that area, I have no doubt that this is an opportunity and not a challenge for those who are coming from a world of education or skill.
Sure. In fact, I would like to bring to light another very important aspect of the entire conversation that we are into. That in India particularly, there is a gender digital divide. So what percentage of women are part of Industry 4.0, if we may understand it this way? And do they have digital skills to adapt to a fast changing industry? How do you look at it?
So I go back to my engineering college days. During those days, there were hardly any girls in engineering courses. That scenario has changed dramatically. Today, that is not the case. Now we are having a conversation around that. Are there enough women in the tech world or digital world? This very conversation is an important step in the right direction. And women have demonstrated that they are second to none. What we need to do is that whenever there is an opportunity to promote a woman into a technology role, the managements have to take bold steps, and we have to back our gut. Women have demonstrated in almost every spheres of life that they are second to none, and that's where the management commitment has to come into picture. A lot of organizations are today focused on this gender divide and want to take proactive, positive measures for greater inclusion of women in the workforce. And whenever we meet industry leaders, we all talk about it. And I can assure you that industry is conscious of it. And there is a greater level of management commitment today to bring women into technologically challenging roles.
Absolutely. In fact, can you also help us understand what exactly are we doing to ensure that women in tech have equal opportunities and not left behind in what is being called as the fourth industrial revolution? It's a continuation of what we already discussed. But if you would like to add something to it.
I would not like to take any special measures for fourth industrial revolution as such. That I was talking in the context of emerging work area in 2030. I would rather talk about that women, how do we provide equal opportunities to women in the tech area. And in that case, what we are doing is that we are doing lots of women-specific programs. Many of our skilling courses are focusing on women, and the lot of new skill partners that we are actively looking for. We are talking to them. How do we provide women-specific tech courses? Many a times, what we find is that in the remote corners of the country, there's a different urban conversation. There's a very different rural conversation, and in large parts of the rural India, still it is considered that the women are good for only certain roles. We have to break that notion of women performing those roles. And at NSDC, we are consciously talking about it. we are making those efforts that how do we bring women into those sectors, occupations where they were not there earlier.
The ET Future of Jobs Summit is going to host several more conversations around the future of technology jobs. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for being with us.
Work and the ways in which we work are fast changing. Many occupations will likely demand abilities that are uncommon at workplaces today. Countries, businesses will have to figure out new strategies to sustain growth, to provide not just income, but purpose and meaning to individuals and communities. For almost everyone, realigning skills to be prepared for future jobs is critical. These are some of the top takeaways from the conversations here at Economic Times Thought Leadership Series, The Future of Jobs. We hope you enjoyed the conversations and that they were useful. Do check out The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Jobs Galaxy. It's a free to download report on the future of jobs. It's on our website. Once again, a big thank you to all our sponsors, starting with our co-presenting partner ThinkExam, skilling partner NIIT, talent partner CoinDCX, and B-School partner ICFEI Business School. From me, Maloni Bhatt, and the rest of the team here at the Future of Jobs, thank you very much for your time and your support.